Are we ready?
Bless you.
Oh, shit. All right, it is on. All right, I'm going to call the DeKalb City Council regular meeting of October 24th to order. Roll call, please.
Morris,
Here.
Larson,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
Perkins,
Here.
McAdams,
Here.
Burbick,
Here.
Faber,
Here.
Mayor Barnes,
Here.
8 present.
Excellent. All right, moving on to agenda item B, Pledge of Allegiance. We have Mr. Shadow Gentry, who is Mr. Hy-Vee, who is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, Shadow. All right, moving on to agenda item C, approval of the agenda. I would take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second?
Moved by Alderman Smith, seconded by Alderman Faber. Roll call, please.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Burbick,
Yes.
Faber,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
8 aye.
All right, the agenda has been approved. Moving on to D, presentations. We have none. Moving on to agenda item E, public participation. So tonight we have Emily Faulkner, who is, thank you, Executive Director of the DeKalb Public Library, who is here tonight. She's going to do a presentation to us regarding the library. I have asked her to go beyond the 3 minutes. She's a subject matter expert on this, on a topic that is important to City Council. So with that, Emily, there is no rush, even though you got, I don't know, 50 people breathing down your neck there. Don't worry about it. Tell us everything that you need to tell us.
All
Floor
right,
is
thank
yours.
you. Well, I'm Emily Faulkner. Thank you all for having me. And this came about because I had been speaking to some of the different aldermen about our strategic planning process, and I heard from a few of you that it might be helpful for me to come give an update as to where we're at with our current strategic plan before I ask you for input about our next one. So I wanted to give you a little rundown on what we've been doing over the past 3 years, and then if you have thoughts, or if any of you have thoughts about what we should be doing over the next 3 years, I will let you know how you can share that information with me also. So back in 2019, the library created a strategic plan to guide us through the end of this year. We asked for lots of feedback and comments about what worked and what didn't, and then we took it and came up with a 4-part plan, which I've given you all there. So the 4 parts of the plan were enrich, inform, entertain, inspire. We took that to be our mission statement, and then each of those had different aspects that we wanted to work on as we were moving forward over the next 3 years. So I just wanted to let you know a little bit about how we got along. Luckily for us, even though COVID-19 kind of threw a wrench in things, we actually were able to achieve almost all of our goals over the past 3 years. I know there was some concern, especially in 2020, that we maybe hadn't gotten very far, but some of the things that we had hoped to do were sort of ambitious moving materials projects that were able to be done more easily with fewer people in the building. So in some ways it worked to our advantage, although that's probably the only thing that was advantageous about the whole thing. When it came to enrich, the main parts were to encourage lifelong learning, to make the library accessible to all, and to be an excellent place to visit and work. This is going to be the longest part of my recap, so don't worry, it'll go shorter after this. For lifelong learning, we started with our youngest patrons. We know that an early love of reading can have lifelong benefits to a child. So over the past few years, we've expanded our early childhood experiences through partnerships with DeKalb County Basics. We've added story times in the parks, and thanks to the generosity of both of our local Kiwanis clubs and the Friends of the Library, we're about to install a permanent story walk for families to enjoy in the Eden's Garden area. That's also a partnership with the Park District, I should say. We also felt it was important to make the library more welcoming for teens and tweens. As many of you know, this is one of the few places in town where kids that age are able to be outside of school activities. They're not really welcome at McDonald's anymore. So we try to make this be a place where they can engage with each other and also provide additional learning opportunities for them outside of their regular school day. So our teen-led book club, our creative writing group, those are both popular, our TAG, Teen Advisory Group. We also have games and activities that are in our teen room now that give them a chance to connect with one another, especially one another coming from different middle schools. We have a lot of Clinton Rosette kids that come over, but we also have Huntley kids. It gives them a chance to interact with their peers they might not know from class. We also moved their books to a more accessible location, and we offer programs for them to learn everything from how to play Dungeons and Dragons to how to give back to the community through volunteering. And our largest group of patrons, of course, is our adults. Lifelong learning is important to our adult patrons, and throughout the past few years, we've been working to provide more experiences and programs that allow adults to explore and discover new things of interest to them. Some of the notable things we've done over the past 3 years are self-guided walking tours and some actually guided walking tours of DeKalb's historic neighborhoods. We've got presentations and lectures on everything from the Chicago Fire to the history of Coca-Cola, which is coming up soon. And we've also expanded our maker programming in our 309 Creative Studio, as well as adding after-hours concerts featuring local and regional artists performing in our beautiful upstairs atrium area. The second part of that first Enrich pillar was making the library accessible to all. When the library expansion project happened, we technically met all of the guidelines for ADA, but we've been realizing that even with those guidelines in place, it's still been difficult for some people to navigate. So over the past 3 years, we've added additional wayfinding signs. Everybody made it down here tonight, which means that they probably saw on the wall that it has a sign now that tells you where this room is. For a long time, there was no sign at all, and people would just wander around looking a little bit lost. We've also added some signage that helps people know which wings of the building things are in, which desks are which, so that they don't have to walk as far. So people with mobility issues can look and see where they're going and make a decision about whether that's the right place to head before they walk all the way over there and find out that isn't what they wanted after all. And we've also moved our collection. One of the main things we moved was large print books, which used to be very far from adult regular materials. Now they're right next to them. And the secret tip I've been telling everybody is if you're ever looking for something and you can't find the regular book because it's so popular, if you look for large print, it's probably right there on the shelf waiting for you. So that's my sneaky tip, but now that they're right next to each other, it makes it a little easier. Similarly, the teen books were locked in the teen room. You had to have somebody watching as you did your search for a teen book. Now they're out and about where you can just go and pick up whatever you'd like. You don't have to walk through a sea of sweaty teenagers to get to it. They're just available for you by the fireplace in the old Hayes building. And then the main part about accessibility that we have been working on is that I've heard from patrons, from aldermen, from everybody, that if you're not in a handicapped wheelchair or perfect fighting form, it can be difficult to get up the front door ramp. So we are engaged right now in a project to unlock what was formerly known as the handicapped door on the part of the building near the Methodist Church alley. We've gotten grants from the DeKalb County Community Foundation and the state of Illinois and have been working on repairing some of the plaster work that was above that door that was causing a concern. But we should be working on that any day now, and then we'll be able to hopefully get that door open by the end of the year because we'd like people to be able to use it. It's better for dropping off a relative, or the handicap parking there is on a lower grade, so it should hopefully be easier for people to access. The third part of enriching the community was to be an excellent place to visit and work. The library board felt that in addition to providing excellent customer service, a big part of this goal was to steward our resources effectively. Over the past few years, we've been able to bring the library completely out of debt, including paying back all the extra money that was borrowed from DeKalb taxpayers when the state wasn't paying its bills. We were able to keep staff busy on projects throughout the majority of the pandemic, and our current rate of staff turnover is about normal. We haven't seen a great resignation here at the library, which reinforces the sentiments that are expressed by staff that the library is actually an excellent place to work. And since they're our most important resource, I hope that they do feel appreciated every day when they come in here. Our second pillar of the strategic plan was to inform the community by making library services known, supporting workforce development and digital fluency, and fostering civic engagement. Surprisingly, the pandemic helped with that also, as it gave everyone a real incentive to improve their digital fluency, and it gave us a chance to share more of what we're doing with people. We were able to invite people from the comfort of their own homes to engage in virtual programs and events, and have been able to work with other groups to encourage job training, workforce development, especially Mortenson's Hard Hat in Hand program, which meets here when they're looking for new recruits, and has gotten, I believe several people have gone on to complete that and get jobs in the trades, which is really wonderful. Also, we've been happy to encourage civic engagement. We've been partnering with the League of Women Voters to host a number of candidate forums, and we've now been hosting these city council meetings for several years, which allows people to come in who might not ordinarily come to the library and makes government more accessible to people in case they happen to be here and find out that you're meeting on a night like this. The third pillar of the plan was to entertain people. As we were speaking, I believe, maybe it was Greg, I can't remember. Somebody asked me where I see libraries going in the era of streaming entertainment and, books. People still read books, and oddly, people who read ebooks read even more paper books. It's if you like books, you like books all the time. But my answer to that beyond the books is that the library has been and is becoming even more of a community center. So more and more people are thinking of a library as a place not just for reading and books, but also for a place to build community and have fun. So to that end, our goals in entertaining the community are to provide programs to delight and to build a community of readers. We offer more than 100 opportunities every month for programming for everyone from little kids to young parents to aspiring artists to history buffs. I gave you our November calendars hot off the press. So this has an engagement, a list of most of the programs that we do. We actually have a separate maker tech calendar that comes out every month, but you can see the sort of the breadth. They're color coded by age. And these are available outside this room and then all over the library also if anybody wants to grab one. And it's also on our website, what we do. Let's see. Oh, we also want to build a community of readers because, of course, we do love to read. And we love to talk about reading. And we have book clubs for all ages that are going strong. We have the Barb Book Club for kids. We have short focus book clubs that have been about Stephen King or Bridgerton or other topics of interest. And then we have a local author fair that we hold every August, which allows us to showcase about 20 local authors to bring them new readers, which is really wonderful. The final portion of our strategic plan was to inspire. We want the library to be a place where people get ideas and then find a way to put them in action. Part of that was by fostering creativity and innovation, which we thought of as a chance to get your hands a little bit dirty and try some new things. Mostly we've been doing that in our 309 Creative art studio. We combined the things that had been in the Nancy D. Castle collaboration studio with some other artist supplies and are able to use the larger space as more of a room that we can spread out. There's good lighting in there so people can work on projects, and we're able to use the Nancy D. Castle collaboration studio as more of a digital design lab. So let's see, what's next? Oh, utilizing community expertise. This is the one thing we did not do in the strategic plan this year. Because of COVID, we felt like it wasn't a great time to invite volunteers. A lot of our volunteers have traditionally been more vulnerable to COVID, so we thought that we should put that on hold. We're right now working on creating a new volunteer program with job descriptions and some ways to make volunteering more fun. We're hoping to launch that in early 2023. We've got the manual all lined up and are ready to approve in the next month or so. So now we're coming to the end of this plan and working to create the next one, which will run from 2023 through 2025. We do know a couple of things that are key for the next plan, namely financial security and fiscal responsibility. I've heard that from everybody I talk to. I've heard it from everybody everywhere else. Don't worry, we know. And it's our goal too. So now that we're out of the debt and we've had a chance to either negotiate or renegotiate most of our vendor contracts, which has been a fun exercise. I just found out today we get to renegotiate our telephone contract, and I think we're going to save thousands of dollars doing it. So I'm really, it was one of the ones that was the longest. I'm really looking forward to seeing where that goes. We're working on turning our attention to capital projects. We've been putting things off for the last 5 years in terms of the capital needs of the building. And some things are either coming to the end of their natural life. We have some IT equipment that you can't see here, but which powers the building that will be completely obsolete next year and the year after that and has to be replaced. It's not supported at all. And we also have some building maintenance projects that have been put on for long enough that we're concerned that either leaving them longer will cause additional damage or become actually dangerous. So those things have to be done. Right now we have about $30,000 in reserves for those capital projects, and a recent estimate from our IT and engineering surveys indicates that we need to do about $700,000 of work over the next 5 years. So we're working on saving money for that. We also know that we need to build unrestricted financial reserves for unforeseen emergencies. Right now we have about 11% of our operating budget in unrestricted reserves, which is about 5.5 weeks. There is a short period of time between April and the end of May where we've been paying the expenses for our new budget, but we haven't yet gotten property tax dollars from our levy, so that 5.5 weeks is pretty tight. We'd like to see that closer to the 25% reserve level that the city has and that other entities have also. And then beyond that, we know we need to keep being a welcoming place, a safe place, a hub for the community, a source of high quality, accessible, lifelong learning. I have heard that the books are important and we need to keep doing that too, so don't worry, they're not going anywhere. But just how we go about doing this is something that we do need more input on. We've extended our patron feedback survey through November 1st. So for anybody who wants to fill that out, you can go to our website, and if you search feedback survey under search our website, it'll bring you the link. Or if you go upstairs at the circulation desk, they'll have paper copies up there. And as for City Council, I know I've spoken with some of you. I know some of you may have had a chance to think about other things. A couple of you I missed, so if you had other stuff. I don't want to take up the time right now asking for your comments and questions, but if you want to share them with me after the fact, I'll stay through the end of the meeting for that. And yeah, we're looking forward to putting this together and hopefully getting it in place for January 1st so we can do the next 3 years. So,
Thanks, Emily.
thank you.
And you may not want to stay to the end of the meeting. I have a feeling this is going to go a while, so. But also, I would encourage any council member to reach out to Emily at a later date in order to sit down and gain some further insight. All right, moving on to appointments, agenda item F. We have appointing Jane Lewinsky to the Board of Fire and Police Commissioners for a 3-year term through December 31st, 2025. Can I have a motion to appoint Jane?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Alderman Favor, seconded by Alderman Verbeek. Any comments or questions, council? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Larson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
8 aye.
Awesome. Jane will be a great addition. All right, moving on to agenda item G, approval of the minutes. We have the minutes submitted by the city clerk, none. And then number 2, minutes submitted by the recording secretary. Those are the minutes of the regular city council meeting of October 10th, 2022. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Alderman Perkins, seconded by Alderwoman Morris. Comments, questions? Roll call, please.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
8 aye.
All right, the minutes submitted by the recording secretary have passed. Also, I almost forgot, I heard a cell phone go off. We can either take donations to the library every time a cell phone goes off, or you could all pause, and I even reached into my own pocket to make sure I was on mute. We're going to have a lot of speakers tonight, so let's make sure that we try and give them the respect that they deserve when they're at the podium. So if you can reach in your pocket, make sure you're on mute. That'd be great. All right, moving on to agenda item H, consent agenda. Number 1, accounts payable and payroll through October 24th, 2022, in the amount of $2,611,778.96. Number 2, Freedom of Information Act FOIA report, September 2022. And number 3, FY 2022 Human Resources Funding third quarter report. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Alderman Favor, seconded by Alderman Smith. Any comments or questions, council? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
8 aye.
All right, the consent agenda has been approved. Moving on to I, public hearings, we have none. Then agenda item J, considerations. Number 1, consideration of providing American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds to the Egyptian Theater, $75,000, and Stagecoach Players, $25,000. Can I have a motion to bring this consideration to the floor?
So moved.
Moved by Alderwoman Morris, seconded by Alderman McAdams. We have a bunch of public comments here, so hang on. Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll go through the public comments. We have a lot of comments. If someone already said what you wanted to capture, you're more than welcome to come on up and just say ditto. But just to make sure that we just give everyone a chance to speak, give every idea a chance to be before council, that's the primary goal. But in consideration of everyone's time here, if someone already commented on exactly what you were going to comment, we'd love to be able to gain that time back so we can have discussion at a council level on this particular agenda item. So with that, number 1, Steve Lundeen, you want to come up? Mr. Lundeen, it's great to see you.
It's nice to see
This is a rock star band director at DeKalb High School who is absolutely amazing and changed, made a huge impact on my child's life. So
Thank you for the introduction. I was
set
not
the stage
quite
for you.
prepared for that.
This better be good.
I'll try to be succinct.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Lundeen. Also, I give everyone, we have a requirement here. 3 minutes is what I'll hold everyone to for the public comments as well. So
Yep.
please, I'm sorry.
I will
interrupted you.
absolutely. I'm here to speak on behalf of in support of the ARPA funding for the Egyptian and as well as Stagecoach. For those of you who don't, despite the introduction, my name is Steve Lundeen. In addition to being the band director at DeKalb High School, I'm also the area coordinator for fine arts at DHS. So I'm actually here to bring up 2 really important things I think I'd like to encourage the council to consider. Most of the conversation that I've seen regarding this funding tends to circulate around business and the impact of the theaters on the business community. I would really like to point out that it has an incredibly positive impact on our young people as well. There are a number of events. There are 2 yearly events that happen at the Egyptian Theater. There's a wonderful art show that really needs to happen in a public space, not a school space, truly a public space. That's been home there for many years. We have a joint concert venue with the NIU Jazz Ensemble and the Sycamore High School Jazz Ensemble and Jazz in Progress that also happens at the Egyptian Theater. Again, that's the kind of event that really needs to happen in the community and get the students out of the school and seeing the town they live in. There's more to that too. Stagecoach has tons of kids from the high school participating. There's events that happen there. There's a YEP meeting there, or they're watching a movie there tonight, from what I understand. There's a lot going on that gives the kids a positive venue to do something good with their lives. So I want to make sure that you all understand the incredible impact beyond just dollars that these theaters provide for our community. I would encourage you guys to discuss that. I know these discussions are difficult and complicated, but I think that's an important factor that I want to make sure doesn't get overlooked. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lundin. All right, our next speaker is Joseph Flynn. And again, Dr. Flynn, just 3 minutes. Nice job facilitating the discussion after the event the other night.
Oh,
that
you were
panel
there?
afterward was great.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor, Board. I'm Joseph Flynn, the Executive Director for Equity and Inclusion and Associate Professor of Curriculum and Instruction at NIU, speaking on behalf of the Egyptian Theater. As the great filmmaker Alfred Hitchcock said, cinema is not a slice of life, but a piece of cake. As the pandemic and shutdown of 2020 took hold, the nation found itself confined to our homes, but what was made clear is that movies are a communal experience. There's a difference between watching a Halloween classic like Halloween, for example, at home alone rather than in a theater with people, with community members, where you can respond to one another in real time. Theaters are hubs of community, and their role in communities should not be minimized to simply a place to see the latest Marvel movie. This is especially true when we think about a rehabilitated old movie house that has been a fixture of the community for decades now. That's the Egyptian Theater, and by extension, the Stagecoach Players. Film and theater are media that help build bridges and heal communities. As a representative of both NIU's Division of Academic Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and the Center for Black Studies, I've been personally involved with powerful collaborations with the Egyptian that help community members explore ideas of culture, community, inclusion, and belonging, allowing a space to explore oftentimes challenging issues in ways that are engaging, thoughtful, and entertaining. For example, in a screening of the classic Gone with the Wind, which I think was in 2019, somewhere around there, I offered the community an introduction that framed the film, pointing out its historical accuracies and inaccuracies and context, while still celebrating the artistic and cultural impact of the film. Or the recent Anime Festival, a collaboration between ADEI, the Asian American Resource Center, and the Egyptian Theater, serving as a bridge between African American, Asian American, and white Americans, as well as the NIU and larger community. Many of us struggled financially during the pandemic, and theaters, dependent upon patrons, were hit especially hard. The funds requested by the Egyptian and Stagecoach Players are sensible, financially responsible, and necessary in order to help them solve these economic challenges from the pandemic. The modest amount will go far to ensure our community continues to have amazing opportunities to share, explore, and enjoy film and theater. After all, what is a community without art? As Forrest Whitaker, 2007 Oscar winner for his performance in The Last King of Scotland, great film if you haven't seen it, once said, "Cinema and the arts invite viewers to focus on a story and, in doing so, peel away its layers and peer into the depths of the human soul." In our current time of divisions, cinema and the arts are where we can come together, learn, and grow together as a community. So please support the Egyptian Theater and the Stagecoach Players. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, we also have Greg Anderson.
Okay, Okay, good evening.
And Greg, your cue is if I put on my glasses, that
I'm
means
sorry?
if I put on my glasses, we're pretty much at the 3-minute mark, just to let you know.
Okay, all right, good.
You guys have been doing great. You've been
I'm Greg
doing great.
Anderson. I'm from Stagecoach Players. I'm here with Susan Johnson. I'm the controller, she's the treasurer, so I deposit the money, she spends it. So it's a good team in that way. We've worked together with Alex from the Egyptian on our application. In March of 2020, the shutdown order came down from Governor Pritzker. We were 8 days away from mounting our big winter musical, which is a big source of revenue for us, Big Fish. That set stayed on the stage for 11 months. We were hoping to still be able to put it on, and it just sort of sat there and collected dust all that time before we finally tore it down. We went 15 months without any ticket revenue whatsoever, which is basically our only source of income. We used that downtime, however, to make repairs to the building, including capital improvements that we had set money aside for, and increased our community outreach to a great extent so that we kept the building active. And even though we weren't incurring or receiving any ticket revenue, the expenses don't go away. Our building expenses are roughly about $4,000 a month just on basics, such as utilities and insurance and basic maintenance. During the shutdown, we did receive 2 COVID-related grants, $12,000 from the Chicago Community Foundation. They were dispersing funds for Arts for Illinois Emergency Relief Fund, and we also received $5,000 from the state of Illinois through a business interruption program. Those $17,000 helped us. However, we still reported more than $45,000 in losses during 2020 and 2021, and then you add on the capital improvements that we made. It put a severe dent in the reserves that we had set aside to tide us over times such as COVID. Even with the reopening, initially, when we reopened in June of 2021, we were still under social distancing restrictions. Our capacity went from 164 seats to less than 60. We couldn't sell every seat. You had to have space between all of them. And now that those restrictions have gone, I have to tell you that our ticket sales have not recovered to pre-COVID levels. For example, the most recent show that we did, Crucible, which was in September, we sold less than 50% of the tickets during the run of that show, which is 7 performances. So we are still being impacted by COVID. It is not over for us. Large performance areas are not very popular places for people to go to. So we are still being impacted. And we could use this $25,000 primarily to help rebuild our reserves, which is really the only way that we got through the pandemic. We're always fiscally conservative. We hold on to every penny that we possibly can. And we do try to be as fiscally responsible as possible, but we do need to rebuild our reserves, and this money will go directly to that. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. You haven't put your glasses on yet, so. All right, thank you very much.
Appreciate it, Greg. All right, then I have, and you got to forgive me, Steve Dubrow? Dupro. Beautiful.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, councilpersons, councilwomen. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Steve Dukro. I've been an arts presenter for about 38 years. I don't know if you remember, Mother Teresa about 25 years ago visited the United States for the first time. And people asked her when she was done. She said, well, what did you think? And she said, after a long pause, I think perhaps the United States is the poorest country that I've ever seen. And of course she meant a poverty of human spirit. And she was challenging us to be better. So we have this $11.1 million allocation. And it appears on the surface that we are allocating less than the 0.1 or 1% to support culture, art, and human infrastructure. I certainly am not belittling the choices that are made. I'm sure they were difficult. But it is possible we're giving $11 million to traditional government projects and a 0.1 or less than 0.1, if we vote against this, for the infrastructure to support the art and culture of our citizens, our families, and our children. I was thinking this afternoon, if an alien came down and interviewed all of us and asked us, well, how did you allocate that $11.1 million? We might say, well, we used some on stone, concrete, sidewalks, demolition, pipes, asphalt, nuts, bolts, wires, screws, traffic lights, public safety. The alien might say, well, that those seem sound. What percentage was it? About 99.9. Okay, well, how much did you give to support really the cultivation of the very highest ideals you have? The human spirit elevated through music, dance, visual art, support for families to gather in the sacredness of community through art, to stimulate the imagination of children at cultural events. Well, less than 1%. So this alien concluded that we would give 99% of funding to traditional government projects and infrastructure, and 1% to programs that nurtured the human spirit and the soul. I fear that the headline would humorously read, "Humans, big on concrete, short on expressing their ideas." If we claim to value innovation, we must fund it, and we must fund the groups whose role is to gather us into this sacred crucible of community when you do art and you do it together. And we tell the best of who we are and what we have to say. I think there's a danger here that if we just fund normal projects, we begin to look like every other community, and then we begin to look like nowhere. This is a chance for us to support two cultural cornerstones. I asked you to consider that. I know you have difficult decisions, but these groups elevate not only our downtown and our business, but our collective human spirit. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Dean Castle. So this is Dean Paul Castle of the School of Visual and Performing Arts at Northern Illinois University.
College of Visual and
Thank you.
Performing Arts. That's okay.
I was so close.
I take no umbrage,
I was so
Mayor
close.
Barnes. Hi, I'm Paul Castle. I'm Dean of the College of Visual and Performing Arts at Northern Illinois University. I joined the faculty in 2016, and ever since then I've been involved with the Egyptian Theater. I'm currently the vice president of the board there, and I've worked closely with the city of DeKalb on a number of initiatives, community enhancement, mural projects. In fact, most recently we were contemplating a grant to erect gigantic statues of huskies at certain
we'll do
interval
it.
moments, and we're
We'll
going
do
to
it.
do it,
Yeah.
but we had to pause for 1 year. But anyway, I don't want to talk about art. I want to talk about return on investment. Thursday's event, if you didn't see it, was 1619, A Journey of a People. It was a fantastic event, and afterwards a number of people came up to me who were so grateful to see something like that they'd never seen before at the Egyptian. And many people said they hope to see more of that in the future. The thing about investments in the arts is that it's over time, and that return isn't obviously seen in the short term. We run so much on quarterly earning reports that we forget that human existence transcends even a human lifespan. You know, Mozart, Van Gogh, Shakespeare, Langston Hughes, Lorraine Hansberry, Frida Kahlo, Akira Kurosawa, all these people, geniuses, of course, their impact lasts for generations. I mean, Shakespeare, come on, it's over almost 500 years. That's a hell of a return. So this request isn't, though, in a human being. They're in institutions. Institutions that have been here a long time, and we hope will be here for a long, long time afterwards. So my financial advisor always says, when investment generates a good return, you keep investing in it. I urge the council to approve this measure. Thank you.
Thanks, Dean. All right, next up, I have Brian Reynolds.
Good evening. My name is Brian Reynolds. I am the owner, along with my wife Dawn, of First Choice Security. We are a private security company with clients that include the Egyptian Theater, Fatty's in DeKalb, Lord Stanley's in DeKalb. We do a bunch of different things. I'm also on the board for the Cornfest in DeKalb itself. I'm the site and security manager. What I'd like to say tonight is the Egyptian Theater doesn't just bring events in. They are the cornerstone for all different types of events and a safe, encompassing place for everybody to come, enjoy a night out, an afternoon out, a day out. Everything from the Pride Parade that we did down here in downtown DeKalb back in June, Rocky Horror Picture Show that's coming up this weekend, to anything else. I had the opportunity to go to Stagecoach for the first time this year and loved the theater. We went and saw a friend of ours, her daughter was in the show. A murder was announced, and it was an absolute great show. I urge this council to approve this measure to give the funding to both these great organizations. They can't run the nonprofits without it. Volunteering is hard to come by these days. We see it at Cornfest every year. We have to get on social media and ask everybody to come down. Our great mayor comes down every year and volunteers along with a lot of other city council members. And you can't have this great city without the Egyptian Theater, without Stagecoach coming down and giving a place for people to come have a safe environment and really enjoy themselves on a weekend, a weekday, or even a Pride Parade, and you can do whatever you need to do, and it's a great place to be. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Brian. I love the great city part, too. Alex, I'm thinking, well, we'll start with Alex, but then, Alex, if you can stay at the podium, just being the subject matter expert on this, I'm sure questions might pop up. So without further ado, the Executive Director of the Egyptian Theater, Alex Nerad.
Yeah, good evening. Alex Nerad, Executive Director at the Egyptian Theater. I've actually been there, had the privilege of being there since 2006. Time has flown by. But I am here tonight in partnership with our friends at Stagecoach Players regarding this funding request that we have made to the city of DeKalb for ARP COVID recovery funds. Our organizations work together often, but tonight we are here jointly making this request as the only two nonprofit arts organizations in the city of DeKalb that own and operate buildings. As everyone is aware, March 2020 was the start of the COVID-19 global pandemic that no one in the world was fully prepared for. Our industry, like most others at the time, was shut down completely. As time went on, most other industries could reopen in some manner with curbside pickup or home delivery, but our industry remained completely shuttered or severely restricted for over a year and a half. Seems like anymore in government, people only show up when they want our elected officials to not do something. It is inspiring to get this much community response in favor of something. Who is here tonight supporting Stagecoach and the Egyptian Theater? That in addition to all the letters of support gathered. Now, we understand that with any consideration of funding from taxpayer dollars, we know it is important to answer as many questions as possible so that our elected officials can make an informed decision. So let me address some of the questions that have come up regarding this funding request. Can these ARP funds be used for this? Yes, that has been already clearly established by city staff and the federal government. Many other municipalities across Illinois and around the country have approved funding from their allotted ARP funds to support local arts organizations who, just like us, were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. Another question, haven't both organizations already received other COVID relief funding? Yes. Both of our organizations were active in applying for all available funding sources to help us through the unprecedented times. This is no secret. We had no idea how long the impact of the pandemic was going to last. We included in our letter to council that we had both received other COVID relief grants, done lots of fundraising, and used our reserves. The Egyptian Theater has talked openly about all of this throughout the pandemic. The Egyptian Theater has every COVID relief grant that we have received listed on our website with the source, the amount, the date we received it. We also list our tax returns and annual audits on our website for anyone to view easily. The Egyptian Theater has shared with our supporters all along what funding we have been receiving. We've shared it in newsletters. We've talked about it on social media. We've talked about it on radio shows and in front of audiences at shows. It is because of that transparency that the Egyptian Theater has once again this year been awarded the Platinum Seal of Transparency from GuideStar. This is the highest level a nonprofit can achieve and is a distinction that less than 15% of participating nonprofits achieve. So the Egyptian Theater over 2020, 21, and 22 to date has received a total of $991,000 across 15 different COVID relief grants. Over those same 3 years, Stagecoach Players has received $17,000 in COVID relief grants. Our organizations have very different sized budgets and operations, so these numbers may seem like a lot until you factor in the expenses over those 3 years, even after we implemented extreme cuts and cost-saving measures. Additionally, it is important to note that our industry is far from back to normal. Across the country, ticket sales and attendance at live events continue to trend on average 50% of what it was before the pandemic. Locally, we are experiencing that same trend, and just like the rest of our industry, are unclear when things will improve. Multiple studies have concluded that specifically nonprofit arts organizations are likely to take at least 5 years to recover after the pandemic is over. While the pandemic may seem over for many industries, we are still not only recovering, but we're still dealing with the impact. The city and the community should be thrilled that the Egyptian Theater and Stagecoach Players were able to receive the amount of COVID relief funding that we have to date. Without that support, the Egyptian Theater would have closed and not been able to reopen. That is how critical this funding has been to date. This is how critical this funding request is to help secure the stability of our organizations moving forward. Another question that's been brought up, both the Egyptian Theater and Stagecoach Players have received generous TIF funding from the city over the years. Why do we need this funding? Yes, we have both been recipients of very supportive funding for capital projects, but not even a penny of those funds could be used for operations. Those funds have been put to great use for what we said we were going to do. We have proven to be good stewards of dollars from taxpayers and donors alike. When both of our organizations received TIF funding in the past, no one knew that we would all be facing a once-in-a-lifetime global pandemic that would shut our organizations down and impact us for close to 2 years. So we are here tonight asking for much-needed operational support. What is this funding going to be used for? These funds are being requested as unrestricted operational support. While yes, we hope to build back up our reserves, it allows us to do so much more than just that. The city itself has maintained a healthy and wise reserve fund throughout the pandemic when it received the $10.4 million in ARP funds from the federal government. That has allowed the city to invest in important community projects. Likewise, both of our organizations can't make any large investments into our operations and programming without a more secure financial standing. If it isn't wise for the city to do it, it wouldn't be wise for us to do it either. None of us know what tomorrow may bring. Does the community support this? Obviously it does. Included in your backup material for this agenda item tonight are 24 extremely passionate letters of support from local restaurants, hotels, retail, and other individuals that depend on our organizations. Letters of support came from these local businesses and organizations: Byers Brewing Company, The Confectionery, DeKalb Corn Fest, DeKalb County Convention and Visitors Bureau, Gordon Hardware, Hampton Inn and Home 2 Suites of DeKalb, Hillside Restaurant, Hometown Sports Bar and Grill, Insomnia Cookies of DeKalb, OC Creative, OLT Marketing, Safe Passage, Red Roof Inn and Suites of DeKalb, Rosita's Restaurant, Sharp Architects, Shaw Media, Kagan Colonel, Topola Luna, 94.9 WDKB, and First Choice Security. Now, we are always proud when the mayor and city staff have potential developers in town and bring them by the Egyptian Theater to show off our community jewel. We are proud that the Egyptian Theater can be a part of the city furthering its goals. We know that the city council, city staff, and both of our organizations all want what is best for DeKalb. We know that you and the community value what the Egyptian Theater and Stagecoach Players provide for the community. But what this request, I guess, really comes down to is if it makes financial sense for the city. The quick answer is yes, without a doubt. Our industry uses the Americans for the Arts National Economic Impact Calculator. This national organization has conducted numerous national studies in hundreds of communities. They update the calculator every 5 years, and they're currently in the process of completing an updated study right now. So the current calculator doesn't even account for all of the inflation we've all been dealing with in recent years. The calculator allows for you to input your community size, annual budget, and number of attendees. All of the backup for this calculator is provided on their website if you want to look into it more. Additionally, just over 5 years ago, the City of DeKalb conducted their own economic impact study on the Egyptian Theater and found the impact to actually be higher than the Americans for the Arts calculator. So, using the more conservative calculator that is currently available, the Egyptian Theater and Stagecoach Players combined have a nearly $3 million direct economic impact on this community. What other opportunity do you have that you can invest $100,000 and in 12 months have $3 million back into the community? Our letters of support back this up. All of these businesses talking about how critical these two organizations are to the success of their businesses. An investment in our two organizations is an immediate investment in our local businesses. Don't just look at this benefiting our two organizations, because this will benefit tons of local businesses and dozens of area nonprofits. You can help expedite us getting back to those incredible economic impact numbers faster. As our community continues to have great success in attracting new businesses and industry to DeKalb, you have the opportunity tonight to show those that have recently joined the DeKalb family and those that are still considering it that DeKalb not only makes wise financial decisions, but is willing to invest in the soul of its community. This request isn't just about looking back and trying to make up for lost revenue. It is about the future of these two organizations, our downtown and the greater community. Thank you for your consideration, and myself and Stagecoach are here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. City Manager.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. So what's before the council tonight is a request, as we've heard so far this evening, for about $100,000 worth of ARPA money, the American Recovery Act dollars that came our way a couple of years ago. And maybe for the benefit of the people in the audience, that money was pegged for certain general categories. It's true that one of them was at the pleasure and according to the decisions of the local taxing body to take a hard look at those shuttered venues such as the Egyptian and the Stagecoach Theater, who were particularly hard hit by the governmental constraints on their ability to stay open. Also, though, and from the Congress that voted this and debated it for 9 months, down through the state bodies and the local bodies that were part of the broader the national debate on whether there should be 1.4 trillion in federal dollars voted for recovery. The principal concerns, not the only, but the principal concerns were to restore not only a business life, but also to shore up families that were particularly hard hit, particularly those underserved and those persons who were the first to lose their jobs as restaurants and bars closed and theaters. And so a good part of the city's spending has gone in that direction. And when all is said and done, about $4 million of that $10+ million would have been spent to that. And that will be done by the end of next year. And these are dollars that have already been dedicated or at least have been identified, and on page 3 of your background you see how that's broken out to date, and a good part of it's already been spent. Some of it has also been spent on the recovery of our emergency response capability. A lot of positions were frozen here. A lot of money was spent to, the fire department and the police department, you don't get days off. They don't sit down or stand down. So we did a lot with fewer people at a higher cost, because a lot of this was on overtime. And so part of that money was to restore our reserve and our budgetary capacity as well. But we could go back and forth on, you know, what is the more important source. Really, all of these all of these are important needs, including the cultural needs. The most elemental cultural needs aren't just how we express ourselves and our spirits through song and dance and the human voice, but also how we, in spirit and in actuality, support each other. The relationships we build, the families we try to keep safe, and try to support financially through hard times. And I think of the money that we spent so far, not counting what you may choose or not choose to do tonight, that's the most important purpose that we have served. And did I mention lead service? Well, I don't think we have to explain what that means. We have had lead services in our community for generations, and we're trying to remove all of them. We're right now leading the state, I would say, thanks to Brian Favor and our water department, in aggressively attacking, now that we have some resources to do this, the removal and replacement of these lines with healthier copper lines. So, both the Stagecoach Theater and the Egyptian Theater have made a business case tonight, as well as an emotional case for support. As I have understood through a number of conversations with Alex in particular, the Egyptian case is not to help pay tomorrow's payroll or the utility costs or so forth. It's to restore the reserve, although, as Alex just said tonight, probably not exclusively for that. And why would that be important? Well, everybody likes to have a couple of months' worth of reserve for the bad times. Obviously, COVID showed us that that's not enough. But the other thing is that the Egyptian is in a competitive business, competing for acts that would be entertaining to us and engaging for us as a community. And they have proven themselves to do very well at that, and we're very happy with that. And the one thing that COVID did was to wipe out the ability to leverage their ask with some of the higher profile acts that end up in the Chicagoland area and might not come out here if the gate wasn't assured in some fashion, that a minimum number of tickets would be sold. And the only way you can do that is you have a reserve. So you basically can promise, we assure you that you'll be able to hit that mark. That makes some sense. That is a business case, but it's one that hasn't been made so much tonight, except in Alex's comments, but I think that is a case. Greg, for his part, and thank you, Greg, for showing up and making your case tonight, because there was nothing in writing for you to share. We didn't know. In a few minutes, Greg laid out their experience over the last couple of years, and that is welcome information. As I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, but your reserve is down about 45,000, even at this date, past somebody at the national level declared that the pandemic was over. I don't know if that's the case. Certainly the effects keep impacting us. So there is that, and your request is for 25,000. So I think the facts are presented, and were presented tonight by speakers in the audience. I tried to fill in some holes. There's also information in your background tonight on what the money that we received from the federal government has been spent on to date, and the money that the Egyptian theater has already received from other federal sources, and a little bit we heard tonight that the Stagecoach Theater was able to get. So I defer to your judgment.
All right, I thought we'll give council a chance to speak, and then I'll wait to the end and weigh in. Alderwoman Larson.
Yeah, just to be totally transparent, first off, my daughter works at the Egyptian, but I have been a supporter of the Egyptian before she worked there, and even if, God forbid, the Egyptian closes, she's smart, she's bright, she's got a college education, she'll survive. This is not about her. It is about the arts in town. And the one thing I'll say that it has come up kind of lately that, well, we didn't know, and all of council was invited by the Egyptian to meet, talk, question. I met with Alex. We had bagels and coffee one morning, and found out all this information. And I know some people are like, well, they got all this money and they got all these grants. That's true. But the city of DeKalb, Chief Thomas, you've got the SAFER grant. You got 9 new firemen. Chief Byrd, later on in the agenda tonight, Department of Justice, you're going to have 3 other ones, officers paid for by a grant. Excellent. We get sales tax coming in here. We get hospitality taxes from hotels in here. We get gas taxes in here. The way this city works is there's money coming wherever we can find it. That is what fiscally responsible groups do. That's why the city of DeKalb, we've had great leadership the last few years that got us through COVID. The leadership of these 2 organizations, that's why I got them through. They pinched pennies until they squeaked, as my mom used to say, and then some. And they're still here holding on. So I don't want them penalized because they chose to find every penny under every rock that they could find to be here. They have worked like dogs. Non-for-profits, I'm telling you, they don't even figure out how many hours they spend at the theater because when they do the performance the other night, they don't get more in their paycheck, their salary. So the more hours they work, the less they make per hour. All of you that with volunteers. God forbid something happens to these 2 and the city have to try to run these organizations, 100,000 is going to look pretty darn cheap. So all I can say is, from the very beginning, I'm 100% supportive of both these groups. They work hard, they work financially responsible, and they are they bleed orange and black more than anybody else in this room. And I think just to sum it up, Cornfest, main stage, oh my God, we're getting rained out. What do? Oh, go to the Egyptian. Oh wait, their basement is flooding. But guess what? Doors opened, show went on. That's exactly what these groups are made out of. I would have told you to go, too bad. But these groups, they're here. They've got our backs, and I think it's our time to step up and have their backs. That's my thoughts.
Council? Alderman McAdams.
I heard from former mayor of DeKalb, Jerry Smith, a very passionate argument for the Stagecoach players and their $25,000. And it reminded me that I had heard a very passionate argument for the Egyptian Theater from former Mayor Bessie Chronopoulos, who is no longer with us. And what she told me specifically was, give the Egyptian whatever they want. Alex, I know it's your birthday, right? Happy birthday. I would be remiss if I didn't ask for more information in regards to the $75,000. When I brought it to residents, the question that I got was, what do they want the money for, and why so much? And maybe I'd have you speak to that.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think one of the challenges theaters and arts organizations have is the perception from the public, somewhat rightfully so, is they see, well, you charge tickets, you're charging at concessions, you're making all this money. What do you need any support for? For us as a nonprofit, which is a totally different model than a for-profit theater, it's core to our mission about all the things that have been discussed tonight, whether it's the school district, over 30 different nonprofits that utilize the Egyptian every year, all of the kids that get to perform there at summer camps and dance shows, I mean, that's fantastic. When we do the national touring acts, which probably bring the most kind of credence to DeKalb, the most prestige, have the biggest economic impact for our downtown businesses when we can bring in 1,000 people to a show at night, those are very expensive. And I'll just give you an example, and I can't name specific artists because every artist contract has confidentiality in it, but I'll tell you, within the last 24 months, there was a show that we brought in. And every show that we look at, we do extensive research. What have their ticket sales been in other markets? How are they doing? What's their following across social media? You know, we spend a ton of time looking, you know, is this going to work? We've talked to other venues that the act has been at, find out, you know, were they good to work with, were there issues, you know, how was their marketing? And the show within the past 24 months that we decided after discussing with staff and discussing with our board, the artist fee alone was $60,000. That's not just the expense of the show. You have marketing, you have hospitality, bringing in meals. We have to pay for them to be in hotels. We've got our staff costs, our overhead, security, tech, lighting, sound. All of that all in for the show that I'm referencing was probably about $80,000 to $90,000 that we were at risk. We had done all of our research. We felt extremely confident. We had talked to other venues that had sold this out. So we thought all the stars had aligned. And thankfully, it did. And we were able to pay those expenses and made some profit that night. But here's the thing that we can't control. If there was a snowstorm that night, if there was a train that derailed downtown DeKalb and people couldn't get to the theater, heaven forbid there was some sort of natural disaster that impacted, you know, power or part of the roof caving in, any of those things are outside of our control. We are still on the hook to those artists for that full amount. So now suddenly we're refunding all of those ticket holders that couldn't attend that show, and we're now $60,000 to $80,000 in the red in one night. Right now, because of the reserves that have been drawn down, we can't responsibly take a risk like that. We just can't. And so when I talk about building up our reserves, it's not just having a rainy day, it's having the reserves that provide us the confidence to know that we can do all of our due diligence and make a really smart, educated decision to move forward with an artist, and we've got some cushion if something goes wrong. Insurance doesn't cover it. We have no other options. And so to be fiscally responsible and to bring the entertainment to DeKalb that DeKalb deserves, we need to be, just like the city, financially sound to be able to take those risks and investments.
Other council. Alderman Burbick.
I completely understand and appreciate where your organizations are coming from. Really tough time, and you know, as a council member, I have to weigh the needs of, you know, not only Ward 6 but also the entire city. And our small business owners, many would tell you that they don't believe the pandemic is over. So I've done research on the use of ARPA funds and what have other communities invested in. And there are a lot of options. And not to minimize the importance of your request and the importance of the theaters to the city of DeKalb, but when is our deadline for when we have to decide when this funding is used? Because certainly small businesses, I've seen in other municipalities where matching grants have been made available through these funds. And what is the best use for these funds to benefit the greater community is what I'm looking at and looking for.
Council?
Timeline?
Yeah, the money should be spent by the end of '24.
End of
Doesn't mean that there
2024.
might not be some, as we get closer to that, some federal decision to slide a little bit, but that's the case. So many communities, we're on the verge of, we go by the calendar year and our fiscal year, are looking to make commitments now and into FY23 so they can be fulfilled by the end of '24.
Thank you.
And if I may real quick respond to Alderman Verbeek, your question about, how do you distribute this and have the biggest impact? I think we've laid out the case that investing in these two organizations has an immediate impact across so many different sectors, businesses, and organizations. On Give DeKalb County Day, one of our supporters had a great quote, and they said, there's over 100 different nonprofits that you could support on Give DeKalb County Day. But if you can only support one, support the Egyptian Theater, because they have an impact across over 30 different nonprofit organizations and so many of our local businesses that rely on our success for them to stay in business.
Alderman Favor.
Yeah, I don't argue with you that the Egyptian Theater makes a large impact in DeKalb. That's one of the reasons that when I came on the council, we were supporting the Egyptian Theater at nearly $500,000 a year, and then the $3.5 million or $3.1 million for the air conditioning was going to be kind of the last big investment made by the city. It's terribly unfortunate, right? Nobody saw the pandemic coming, but there are, as has been mentioned, there are other public safety, public community uses for this money. Go back to the aliens coming back down to earth. If you said, hey, we're still feeding people water in our municipality through lead lines, and I think for 50 years now we know that lead is terrible. What are you doing about that? Oh, we've decided to give that money to an organization for the entertainment of our community. If people don't want to come to the city of DeKalb because they fear violence might be happening or they might be a victim of a crime in DeKalb, what good does providing additional funding to the Egyptian Theater do at this point? I think the city council has to make these tough decisions, and it's not an easy decision to make. But for myself at this point, I'm not going to recommend going forward.
I'm going to let everyone get. So Alderman Smith?
Me?
Yes.
Thanks, Alec, for everything. You talk about not-for-profits. I work for one. I handle Meals on Wheels for 4 counties, and transportation for 2. I know how it is with not-for-profits. When we're trying to feed our seniors, it's tough every day. I will tell you, it's a very tough thing. And to Alderman Larson's, yeah, I work a lot of hours. So I can hear my phone over here dinging. I know exactly what that is. I'm torn. I really am. I've been to the Egyptian. Been there since my daughter danced when there was no air conditioning. I think you and I had that conversation about how hot it was. Let's leave it at that. And so I am torn. I know you've reached deep. I thought things through on this, and I'm like, oh, do they increase ticket sales a little bit, or dollars a little bit? But then you tend to turn people away. I agree with several of the aldermen that, we have other uses for the funds, but I think the use for the Egyptian and the Stagecoach are both critical. I tend to think I want to support this. I just think we have to, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Morris.
I feel like everyone who spoke tonight made amazing arguments that were completely sound. I'm looking at the spreadsheet here with the ARPA spending, and I feel like we have made the decision to balance our investments across the community in appropriate ways, and I see that there is funding remaining for this cause, and I fully support it.
Alderman Perkins.
Kudos to all you guys for coming out and supporting this. I mean, it really shows the passion for these two entities in the community. I've had a lot of experience over my life in both. what do we see for the remaining, do we have a crystal ball or a timeline for the remaining 278? Because I think everyone's torn, and we want to make the right decision for those remaining funds. And without some vision on where those, what we see for that, I'm a little uneasy to make a choice today. And I guess to some, I think it was Alderman Verbeek's timeline question. When do we have to decide? What do we have to decide? How critical is this for you guys this evening? Those are questions I'm weighing in my mind. Because I think there are other entities, you know, if we look at this, and, you know, there are other areas that I think would have a voice, a compelling voice for some of these funds as well. And I'd just like to have a little more information in front of me before making that determination if possible.
Well, I'll say, as I said earlier, that the money should be committed in the next 12 to 18 months and spent. I mean, there has to be some idea of where it's going to be spent and how long that will take, and we don't want to leave money on the table. On the other hand, we want to spend it wisely, as everybody in this room wants to do, and as deliberately and broadly as possible. So we're down to about $278,912, and if I could say, sitting here, we are done with the Annie Glidden North neighborhood. All is well. Safety is secured. Families have plenty of employment opportunities, recreational opportunities, and healthful food. And, you know, I could go on. This is a parallel conversation we've been having here in recent months about what's next. We've been listening to residents of our most populous and underserved area of town, and the ideas that are generated. There have been a number that have been particularly unique, but on the whole, we get down to about 10 solid asks of this government. And I can tell you right now, this is the fund that would, it's a small amount that's left that would be available to address many of these concerns. I'm a member of the Opportunity to Cal Board on behalf of you, and there are some other members in the audience here tonight, and they're very much aware that it's going to take more than this to even get partway along toward the solution of what to do, and particularly that area right now, which is growing grass. And maybe that's ultimately what people want. That's not what they're saying they want, but maybe that's ultimately how it ends. But I don't think so. So that's another thing. And these are tough decisions. It's you take it very seriously, I know.
Alderwoman Larson.
Just in response to Alderman Faber's comments, this isn't just about entertainment. They have put on programs for free about mental health, about community outreach, dealing with suicide. They have put on the show that we just saw the other night that will help maybe put not an end, but how to deal with racism, and that to open people's minds and to see we're all the same color on the inside. I mean, it's about supporting safe passage, about women who are having trouble, desperate trouble, criminal trouble against them, to have safety. I mean, it's not just about showing me a movie and making me happy. It's ways that I think can address issues that we have in Annie Glidden North, in people who are dealing with poverty. It's not just about make me smile. It's make me healthy.
Other comments? Oh.
If I can, real quick, address a couple of comments made. To your comments, Alderwoman Larson, just this morning, we had 350 eighth graders from Huntley Middle School that walked to the Egyptian, watched a movie based on a book that they've been reading in class. For many of those kids, they've probably been never, taken to a movie. Their families might not have the means. They were able to do that. When we host the DeKalb School District All-District Art Show, we have over 2,000 people that come through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights. The pride on all of those kids' faces that their work is being shown in our community. They're not getting that anywhere else. From providing opportunities for safe passage, for many years they hosted their Take Back the Night event and their vigil event in churches because that was where they could find kind of free spaces to gather. And they were finding that for various reasons, individuals might not be comfortable attending those events at those spaces, regardless, depending on their religious views and other things. And by moving it to the Egyptian over the past 4 to 5 years, they have seen the attendance skyrocket because everyone has told them they feel safe at the Egyptian Theater. It is the community center, is where people can come together both in joy and sorrow and have meaningful conversations. We talk about, crime in the community, and by all means, myself and multiple of the staff sit on different boards and committees, and we talk about that. We're working on that as a community. It will always be a work in progress. But I can tell you, of the more than 55% of our audience that comes from outside DeKalb County every single year that comes to our events, they rave about how safe they see DeKalb, how welcoming the downtown is, how many wonderful restaurants we have, the free parking. Folks from outside of DeKalb love coming to DeKalb. I'll give a quick anecdote on that. During the pandemic, when we were starting to able to slowly reopen, we started getting contacts from tons of dance studios from the western suburbs. Because we had air conditioning. It was the huge saving grace that allowed us to start getting back up on our feet sooner after the pandemic than had we not. So we only averaged about 3 dance studios each year that used the theater in June, and they just sucked it up. We all sweated like crazy. And thankfully we had AC. And so as I started getting phone calls from these dance studios from Algonquin, Naperville, North Aurora, Wheaton, and said, hey, we have been performing at a high school auditorium for years and years. They're not allowing outside rentals. We're desperately looking for a new place. Do you have dates? So we went from 3 dance studios to 13 that brought in thousands and thousands of people. And we thought, folks from Algonquin, Naperville, they're going to come here once because they need a space, but once those other spaces open up, they'll be going back. I can tell you all 10 of those dance studios that came here rebooked for this year and are already rebooked for next year. They said they've been so welcomed into DeKalb. Their families love coming here. They love the Egyptian. And in terms of positive media attention, Mayor Barnes, you know this because we've worked together on Proudly DeKalb stuff forever. And a big complaint, rightfully so, is that DeKalb is only talked about in the Chicago and Rockford markets when there's something bad that happened in DeKalb. The Egyptian Theater is able to get positive news about DeKalb. We've been featured on WGN. We've been featured in Rockford TV. We were actually in the Washington Post. The Egyptian Theater helps bring that positive, feel-good attention to DeKalb that is desperately needed right now. So, and kind of my last comments with what's come up here, there are lots of things that the city can use these ARP funds for. From my understanding, they were very specifically passed down to assist municipalities and communities recover from the impact that COVID had. Our request to you is 100% in line with that for what one of the priorities of this funding came down for.
Thank you, Alex. Alderman Burbick.
And certainly appreciate all the free events. Have attended many over the years, but as we all know, they're not free. So you've mentioned the school district a number of times, and what is your annual transfer each year from the school district to the Egyptian to help cover the baseline costs of these free events?
Yeah, just because it's free to the public doesn't mean it's free internally. As core part of our mission, we provide so many of those free to those groups to use the space because flat out, if they had to pay, they wouldn't be able to do the event. And as part of our mission, it is important to be able to provide those opportunities. And that is where grants, fundraising, sponsorship, all of that throughout the year helps us provide that service for the community.
You do understand, though, that there's a lot more revenue flowing through the school district than through the city of DeKalb.
I'm not intimately aware of their finances, and so I
Right.
can't speak to that.
I'm just stating that perhaps other help can be found to help bridge the gap to support these free events so that, yes, they're free to the public, but not necessarily having a negative impact on your operations.
And I think that's certainly a conversation that can be had to help start bridging the gap in there. And every event is going to be a different scenario depending on who the organization is.
Right.
For me, you know, there's so much. I mean, Alex and I have spent a lot of time talking about this particular topic. Alderwoman Larson and I have spent a lot of time trying to educate myself, understand. It is, in many ways, I want to say I'm the biggest fan of the Egyptian Theater. Now, everyone here is going to be the biggest fan, I know. But Alex
We've had
knows I'm
multiple.
that guy that anytime a friend or a relative or a community member or a developer comes, I'm texting him, hey, are you open? And I want to show off the Egyptian Theater. Absolutely adore the Egyptian. 100% believe in the investment and the return on investment that we've gotten out of the Egyptian has been substantial. But for me, it's about how we spend money, and that's the tough role that we're all in up here, right? We have a budget before us. We have contribution from the federal government in the form of ARPA. Where do we want to spend those particular dollars? And I've gone back and forth on this in my head, but for me, what it comes down to is, you know, when we talk about art, I think that was been mentioned multiple times and the impact it has on someone. I'm a big believer in that, and so is council. We're investing in a whole mural project. We got $50,000 in money from T-Mobile to put more murals, more public art throughout the community. Me personally, I'm spending my own money in front of my building to put in some public art, and I'm going to put murals on my building. I'm a huge believer that art is the way we connect emotionally to people, and they form an impression and a lasting impression about DeKalb. So those from the western suburbs that you mentioned are forming that, and the Egyptian Theater is the pinnacle of that. You can't go to the Egyptian Theater and not be absolutely blown away and think DeKalb is an amazing place. Even if they didn't do anything else, that alone is phenomenal. We also do architectural improvement programs, so we spend money on facades downtown and buildings downtown, trying to improve the look and feel. We went to 2 lanes downtown, and these are all things, in my opinion, that also help the Egyptian Theater, help Stagecoach, where it makes it more appealing for people to come downtown, to go to restaurants. We slow down pedestrian traffic, so when they walk to the Egyptian to their show, they have even a better experience when they go to the Egyptian. Even it sounds maybe really small, but the street signs that we're doing, putting the Husky head on signs downtown, it's all those little things that, again, when it comes to arts, when it comes to making that emotional impact, the city of DeKalb is doing on such a level across multiple entities, not just the Egyptian Theater. So then I think about, you know, my love. I'm one of the guys who wrote a letter when I was president of DCDC in support of the TIF funding. So I've been in the audience, right, and spoken on behalf of, oh my God, city, you need to invest in the Egyptian Theater. And they did. They invested TIF money, which I thought was an incredibly wise decision. That air conditioning that we helped provide, that get year-round shows. From a revenue standpoint, we added potentially 3 months of additional revenue to the Egyptian. So Alex and I have talked about this, even though that was an infrastructure improvement, not operational. To me, in my head, the way I think, it added to and contributed to the operational improvement of the Egyptian. You know, I feel like the city of DeKalb has leaned in heavy on the Egyptian Theater, and rightfully so. The ROI that you're talking about, that's why we've already spent the millions. Absolutely, because we knew we invest in that, we're going to get a return on that investment. It's going to help the businesses, help everyone, help the schools, help, and all the nonprofit stuff that you do and all the stuff you do for free, absolutely. You're not going to find anyone up here that's going to have an argument, I think, with any of that. And I don't think you're going to find anyone up here that isn't going to think, you and your staff, crush it. You know I say that all the time. Love you guys. Huge supporter. But since the alien narrative is coming up repeatedly, right, which I did think was appropriate in some ways, we didn't mention the ARPA money. We have a theme up here on what we're spending that money on, and it comes down to public safety. And I don't know if everyone saw the background material, but that lead service replacement, we spent $1 million providing safe drinking water to people. We tore down Hunter Hillcrest, which was the most atrocious place for any human being to live. And I don't think you could actually say you live there when you actually walk through it, because that was not a place any of us would ever want to be or want anyone in the city of DeKalb to be. And that was 1.5 million. You know, there's 128,000 that we spent on relocating the tenants that were in there, and we did it over a 6-month period to make sure that we took care of all of them. Edgebrook and Kimberly Drive reconfigurations, police love it because we're blocking exit points in those neighborhoods. So now if they get a call, they can come in and potentially catch the perpetrators in those situations. Fairview, we're doing some calming. So Fairview between 4th and 1st Street, we have a semi-truck problem. I don't know if anyone lives in that neighborhood besides Alderman Perkins. I hear this all the time. Trucks coming through, and you got kids going from that neighborhood. They're trying to cross the street to the parks that are right there, to Huntley Middle School now? Huntley Middle School. Sorry, I went to DeKalb High School there, so I had to pause. But on their way to Huntley Middle School, and this is a way that we're going to provide safety for our kids. So for me, pretty much everything that we've been doing when it comes to the ARPA money, especially the only thing we've been doing lately, is spending it on public safety. So this to me isn't about, does the Egyptian deserve? Oh my God. I mean, we've, as I said, we've leaned in over and over and over again when it comes to the Egyptian. But we have some real issues in our community, and when I ran for mayor, I heard it over and over and over again, public safety. And that was one of the 3 things that I ran on, public safety. And so for me, the ARPA dollars that we have available to us, I want to continue that path of investing in public safety, because the safer we make the public, the more pride, you talk about Proudly DeKalb, the more pride we're going to have, right? The safer we make this community, the more people from the western suburbs that are going to, besides going to the Egyptian, they're going to hear, it's a great place to send my kid to school. It's a great place to go see a show. It's a great place to go see restaurants. So that investment that we've been making on all these other things, not only are they providing some people that can't come here, right? They don't have the means to come to a council meeting. They don't have a voice that a lot of us have. What we're doing is investing in their quality of life, their safety for their kids. And for me, when it comes to the ARPA dollars, I want to continue to lean in on that when we spend the money. So that's where I stand. Nothing to do with Egyptian. Love you guys. Oh my God, I wish I could give you whatever you wanted out of my personal pocket, and I would if I could. But this just comes to public safety when it comes down to it for me.
If I can, real quick.
Yes. And let's keep, we're getting.
Yep. So, Mayor, you and I have talked about, and we're in agreement, public safety is definitely important. And we've talked about so much of the development coming to DeKalb, which is phenomenal, increases property taxes, which primarily go to pensions. And it's, the city's budget depends on.
Exclusively go to pensions and $500,000 out of our general fund. But just wanted to clarify that.
And so the city budget to do all of these other initiatives relies on sales tax. The Egyptian Theater and Stagecoach are a way to leverage some dollars now to have a huge return in sales tax across all sorts of different tax incomes, to be able to do even more of what's being discussed here tonight, not just this year, but for many years to come.
I don't argue with you, and I think we all understand that, but there's a point where, and that's where I'm at, we got to spend money in the rest of the community as well. I mean, we could give you $10 million, and in theory, that's going to make us $13 million. Where does it end in my head? And for me, the way we've leaned in when it comes to contributing to the Egyptian Theater, it's been substantial. And also what I want to do is, there's other sectors of our community that, especially when it comes to this money, I just want to spend there. So that's just my opinion. We've got 8 here, so it's not just me that decides how we're going to move forward with that. So this is a consideration. So you want to know if we bring it forward to next council meeting.
The next logical step would be a direction one way or another. Do I prepare with the city attorney's help a resolution and some contracts or not?
So this isn't a roll call item, but I think we could do a quick vote and decide, do we want to bring this back at another council meeting to vote on for approval of the request that's before us? Yes, Alderman Burbick?
But with the time frame, does it need to be yes or no at this time? In other words, we sort through a number of other priorities, some have been mentioned, and we circle back. And if maybe some of these other numbers end up much better for what's been forecasted, then we have some options. So for me, it's not yes or no tonight.
Right.
It's how does this develop over the next year and a half, 2 years, and make these sound decisions, to your point, Mayor.
Yeah, I think the question is, do we bring it to the next council meeting or not? So
No.
that's how I should
Yeah.
rephrase that.
Then
Yes,
no.
Alderwoman Morris.
Sort of in that context, Alderman Verbeek, I was wondering if, we made a decision perhaps to consider giving a partial portion, sorry, that was redundant, a portion of this amount that they've requested and perhaps give it over time. And then as time goes on, if at some point when we're getting toward the end of the time, we recognize, hey, we don't have another use for this, let's give them their full request. Or if that later time, when we realize we don't have another use for it, then we say, oh, okay, well, we ended up giving you each, half or, 3/4 of what you requested. But now we see that there is a more pressing need. And then at that point, so.
So I think if we decide if we want to bring it back to the next council agenda, we can make that decision right now. And if it is a no, I think we have some very passionate council members on this topic, and people in the audience as well, that I doubt this is going to be a subject that just dies. So that's always a possibility in the future. Yes.
So
Alderman Perkins.
one last thought from me. Today or the next meeting, I'm not prepared to vote yes yet. Now, that doesn't mean as time moves along, I may be prepared to, but I need to see more of what else the community needs are. Quite frankly, for me, I believe there could be needs out there that aren't going to reserves. Reserves are reserves. Those needs may be needs, and I'd have a tough time earmarking something for someone's reserves and have a need emerge that's a genuine need. That's my reservation. But at a point in time, it could be a wholehearted yes for the whole 100 or more. I'm not there today.
Okay.
And I won't be there next meeting either.
City Manager?
I think in fairness to all concerned, we should be very realistic here. $278,912. This year, the council will have in the proposed budget what we had last year, $200,000 out of the city's coffers for about 20-plus social service agencies that provide services to the underserved and then also, regardless of income levels, to people in need on an annual basis. And we've been doing this for decades, and it's creeping up a little bit. But that $200,000 doesn't go very far. All of this money could be put into that. I'm not saying that's my recommendation. I'm just saying it's easy to come up with the needs right now. We'll have another $800,000 to $1 million worth of lead service replacements to do. Now, we're banking on the IEPA to give us some assistance. It's not arrived, not guaranteed. I think we stand in good favor, but that's a possibility. Let's take that out. You were talking about safety. We incentivize the attraction of large businesses to come here. There's a general consensus that is helpful. Are we incentivizing the ability of people to come here and stay here because they can stay safely in their apartments? And we have many families who are trying to live in units that are surrounded by some bad actors. And I'm happy to share the shift pass-alongs that I get for all 3 shifts every day. Okay? I don't think I have to, and if somebody's innovative enough, they can figure this out. They can go to the police department website and find it. So that money will be gone in 6 months through the good and thoughtful efforts of this group and the people you represent. So I don't want to misrepresent that it's just going to be hanging there and sometime in 2024 we'll come back to it. That would be ingenuine. I'm not going to suggest that to you.
That's a good point. So chances are, if we don't bring it to the next council member
Or
meeting,
soon.
yes, or soon, that
soon.
the money won't be there. Yeah.
It's part of the budget process.
Yep.
And if I can, one real quick thing, that,
Yep.
in all due respect.
Brief though, please.
We've been, we started asking for these funds in June of '21. So it's now been over a year and a half that we've been working with city staff and members of council to try and bring this request forward. So for us, this isn't a first time. It's been over a year and a half, knowing that at any moment, some new surprise could put one or both of our organizations out. And so I just urge council to consider moving this forward. There will always be lots of other needs, and hopefully tonight we made the passionate appeal that we believe this is a worthy endeavor to move forward.
Council, so we can take a vote on, do we want it to come to the, I would just say the next council agenda. It could be 2 or 3 down the road, but to Bill's point, more of a clear guidance on do we want this to move forward or not. And I think that would be, as I think Bill put it, but we need to put everyone's mind, what did the council decide at this point? So that's what I'd be asking for a vote on. Do we want to bring it forward or not? How does that sound? Yes, Alderwoman Larson.
And just real quick, kind of addressing what Alderman Verbeek was saying, and Bill, that this money's not going to just sit here for a long time. So I think whether, like, I'm not kind of putting an all call out there, but if some other group doesn't get moving along either, it's not going to be here. So for us to be like, oh, let's wait 6 months or whatever, I don't think that's going to happen either. So I think for the Egyptian,
Yeah.
and that they've already been
And
at this
Stagecoach.
process for 15 months, that we need to get it on one more, the recent one. One's coming up.
So are we good on calling a vote on do we want to bring it forward? Does that sound like the right way to do it? So you all know, has nothing to do with the impassioned plea, has nothing to do with the validity of the Egyptian at all. My God, huge fan. Believe in the Egyptian, support the Egyptian. This is just us deciding on what we want to use this dollars for. Your voice, I got to thank you all for coming out. Your voice has been phenomenal. It's heard. We all got lots of calls, lots of emails. We've been discussing this for quite some time. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming out tonight. This is the cool thing about local democracy, right? Local government, is we can all come out, speak to people in decision-making firsthand, and hear what their thoughts are directly from their own mouths. So with that, you want to do a vote on do we move this forward or not? Do we move it forward? Yes or no?
It's typical in our consideration that you just ask. We just ask. We don't usually do hands up, hands down.
Isn't it the same thing, but okay.
It comes, but it's not a vote, it's not an action item.
Yeah, I wasn't going to do roll call. We'll just do that. Alderwoman Larson.
Oh, here's a surprise, yes.
Mm-hmm. Alderman Morse.
Yes.
Alderman Perkins.
No.
Alderman Smith.
Yes.
Alderman McAdams.
Yes.
Alderman Favor.
No.
Alderman Burbick.
No, not for the next meeting.
And I'm a no. So that's 4 no's, is that what I heard?
4-4.
And then if I vote, I'm the veto, essentially, if this was an actual agenda item.
If this was an agenda item, it would be a veto, which could then be subject to reconsideration. But I think the question is whether it should be part of the budget that's going to be proposed, and we're going to have a budget hearing, I think, coming soon at the end of the month, at the end of the year, so.
Well, how do you do an impasse on a consideration?
Well,
because it went before council and the vote stood, doesn't mean it wouldn't change.
The city attorney makes a good point. You want us to put something in, I guess it would be our general fund support, which is we don't have a contingency fund, but we could put something in there, figure of appropriate title, which is basically a holding fund for some part of this. Or there may be another way as we think about it in the cold light of tomorrow morning, but we could do that. I mean, the budget process is racing toward now your discussion in mid-November. We're finishing the numerical budgets, writing all the narratives, and we could put something aside that gives you some latitude to come back to this again. And in the meantime, there may be other demands too. I think that we are getting more demands on the social service side, so maybe that independently deserves something else. But that's something I'll make a pitch to you about in about 3 weeks.
But then we debate then
Well, yeah, right now, you're at an impasse, so there'll be more debate, more conversation in the community, and it may turn the conversation one way or another. If it doesn't, if it's locked in the budget, as apart from the ARPA fund, then it's something that could be used for something else. Or it could be in the ARPA fund. We'll talk about it tomorrow.
Well, we got an impasse, so I guess that's our way to proceed forward. All right. Thank you all. You do not have to stay. We have other agenda items that you may or may not be interested in, but don't take offense by leaving. And again, thank you, Alex, for coming out and sharing. You betcha. All right, have a good night, everybody. All right, moving on to our next consideration, consideration of the annual property tax levy in the city of DeKalb. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved.
Moved by Alderman Verbeek, seconded by Alderman Perkins. City Manager.
Thank you. Do you want to take a breath?
We got a lot to get through. And if anyone needs to take a break, just feel free to get up and take a break. We'll still be here.
This is, and we have a busy agenda tonight. I'm going to hit some highlights here. The council is aware that we've talked about this both in a joint meeting and in very general terms, what are some of our requirements and challenges are with the Finance Advisory Committee back in August. Spent an evening talking about property tax and what we can do to lower the impact on our local residents and businesses. At the same time, enjoy some part of the development bonus that is coming from the extraordinary investment by others in our community on the south side of town and other ways. And then again, last week, the Finance Advisory Committee, specifically as it has for a number of years, made a recommendation, which I'll get to in a few minutes, concerning the property tax levy. So I don't know if you all have the energy, or the remaining people in the audience have the energy, but so what's this levy stuff and rate stuff and EAV, and how do they work, and what's going on? I hope people will take a few minutes and read the background. We try to, in a very transparent fashion and detailed fashion, provide a modicum of information that people can use to arrive at thoughtful decisions about the value of what you're doing up here. But there are two things that I feel strongly about and have for over 30 years in public service, and that is that your responsibility from the standpoint of financial matters to the community is exemplified in two actions that you take every year. And one is the vote on the annual budget, which is also a good guide if it's written well and in a kind of layperson's language to the city services that are provided by the municipal government every year. And then also the tax levy. And I don't sweat anything more than the tax levy. When I finally sign the final sheets, after all your decisions and all the discussions, and it goes to the county, I still have this gnawing fear. I'll wake up some morning, I'll get the note from the county saying, you're $1 million short. And I've done pretty well in public service. I don't have $1 million to fill your hole, if that's the case. And that's not a laughing matter. That is the fact. So, what do we have tonight? Levies are done by all of the local taxing body, public local taxing bodies. The levy is the actual dollars that you think are fair to ask the community to pay for your services or some portion of your services. The other part of the three-legged stool is the community wealth and how that's assessed. Community wealth in its full assessed valuation is no longer the basis for creating the rates that we are going to talk about here tonight. There's something called equalized assessed valuation. And that was something that was done a long time ago because in the earlier part of the 20th century, Illinois was so corrupt, I mean, I won't editorialize, but it was so corrupt then, that and it was a system of who you knew, so some people were paying no taxes, still are, and some were paying a lot of taxes not commensurate with their ability to pay. So an attempt to equalize assessed valuations across the state was created, and townships now have something called a multiplier. Some are poorer townships than others, and so try to raise the value if it seems to be a little bit lower, relatively speaking, in other counties, let's say in the northern part of the state, or not. Finally, the rate. You divide the levy by the EAV, and the product is the rate. Levy, EAV, rate. All right, here are three options. So it does start with EAV, because if we didn't have any value, then all this would be academic. Some good news. Since 2019, the city's EAV, now this is, I'm estimating where we are this year. It's a painful process because we don't know what the final assessor's numbers will be for value in each of their small townships until after you've made the decision on the levy. And in fact, you don't see what is going to happen if you're following this as a governmental representative until April of the following year, for sure, what that EAV is. So there's a lot of spitballing that happens, and you try to be conservative. So since 2019, our community wealth has increased by $182,773,161, or over 31%. Yeah. You would think, in a discussion, whatever you want. Not true. Yeah. Not true. We are in competition for business, for families, with other communities in northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin and eastern Iowa and northwestern Indiana. And interestingly, our aggregate rate for the all of the local taxing bodies is about 20% higher than much of our competition. Geneva, St. Charles, and yes, we do get compared to those. They may not be as, we're fractional in terms of population and community wealth and so forth, but when communities are being sized up by businesses and families, that's a competition. In Batavia, North Aurora, and South Elgin, Sycamore, I could go on. In March and April of this year, you approved a financial plan, a 3-year financial plan, and that plan had the comps, and it played all this out. And I don't think to your surprise, but to community surprise, we found out where we were with our aggregate rate, and it was too high. And it's hurting us. So what are we doing? We're paying at least 50%, sometimes more, of the property tax that would otherwise be owed by many of the new companies coming in to invite them here. That's the price of decades of charging too much in terms of property tax. The other ingredient, this is a structural dilemma. Structural may not be a sufficient word, but structural meaning, it doesn't go away through wise investment and so forth. In our annual budget and in the property tax side in particular is a broken downstate pension program. It's not the fault of the firemen and policemen who pay into it. It's an impossible system. It's a closed amortization system. And by 2040, 90% of all of our funds, police and fire, have to be funded, 90%. Many of them are in our own, or I say the high 40s in terms of funding, which is fine. No cataclysm is likely to cause all of that to be paid out at any one time. But we're 39th most populous city in the state out of 1,200 or 1,300. And more than half are somewhere around 20%, 15%. Some are as low as 5% funding. Communities can't go bankrupt in the state of Illinois, but services can stop. And so we don't want to be in that point. Well, we're working with our legislature, which has been making moves to repair that amortization system, which, and I think the mayor, somebody said this earlier, the mayor said that, or maybe it was Mr. Verbeek said this earlier. Every dollar of the property tax that comes to the city of DeKalb based on past levies, every dollar goes into the downstate pensions. Plus, this year, what we're going to have to spend is over $1.7 million in additional sales and use taxes or whatever else is in the general fund pot. State income tax, whatever is on the dollar bills, right? Boom. It's insupportable. It's basically like having a credit card and paying the minimum balance, $25 or whatever they say it is, but then knowing that next time the interest on what you owe is going to exceed that, and you never are going to catch up. You can throw a little bit of money in there as you can, but that's why people go upside down, and that's what we're doing. It's important that people know that. It's all over your background, and it's important that people in town know that, because even while we're trying to provide leadership in the way of reducing our rate, which falls very intimately on individual businesses and homeowners, we could use that money, if we were just selfish, to pay off our pensions. Okay, 3 options are before you tonight. The first one is essentially, and this is, by the way, baked into what will be presented to you in mid-November in the budget, essentially no increase in the city's share. The city's share, we don't speak for the school district or the park district, anybody else. City's share of homeowner property taxes. And what I've been doing for the years I've been here is going past the big numbers and getting to an actual homeowner's obligation. And I've taken a house that's worth just a little now, a little bit over $300,000, EAV of 100 plus, and our rate will be essentially the same according to option 1. What we don't know, because of the EAV, still in doubt, it could be absolutely no change in the property tax. Last year, people were calling us saying, hey, I actually saved $14, $30, $50, whatever it was. They might have to pay a couple bucks if the EAV number we see is lower than we're projecting, which is a conservative projection, or they may pay even less if it's higher by, say, $5 million. We don't know yet. Option 2, in your financial plan from March, April, we pegged what we thought was an aggressive 3-year plan, if all the other taxing bodies bought in, to get us to a competitive rate with all of our competition to the east primarily, somewhere around $9.6, $9.7 dollars per 100. We were, at the end of last year, at $11, by the way. And if we do our part in that, there's not much difference between option 2 and option 1, but except a little more out-of-pocket dollars for the levy impact. Finally, the third one is, hey, we're tired of taking it on the chin. Let's go, at least let's claim that 1.7 million and growing beyond our property tax that's coming out of sales and use tax or whatever else. Let's claim that. Let's just put that on in terms of our levy and let the chips fall where they may. Not good news for the local homeowner, and that spread is in here. Instead of being about the same, $5 up, $5 down, you'll see on that $100,000 plus EAV or $300,000 house, you're going to see an increase of, 250, about $260. And then imagine what that's like for a business in town. A person who owns a piece of commercial property, pay taxes too. All right. Those are the three options. The Finance Advisory Committee recommended option number 1. We recommend that at the staff level, and we welcome your comment.
Alderman Perkins.
So, as a liaison with the Finance Advisory Committee, met with them last week. Thanks to city staff and the Finance Advisory Committee for some spirited discussion, pursuing the options. I highly encourage everyone to go to the minutes of that meeting. And the minutes can be a little challenging because it seems like there's about 30 pages because there's minutes for multiple meetings. But the piece to focus on is the meeting, or the minutes leading up, or the agenda for that meeting. There's some great detail in there where we lay out a prospective budget. And the reason I'm talking about this is, A, I support option 1. And I support option 1 because it simplifies what the city's responsibility is, and it kind of earmarks the pension issue that we're going to have. And the pension issue that we're going to have, not only DeKalb, but the rest of the state, is going to force us into a deficit position in subsequent years. And I think it's important that everybody looks at that, everybody understands that, get that out front of people, because there's a lot of complexities in this when you're talking about EAV and multipliers and whatnot. But the reality of it is we're going to be in a difficult position in a few years. And I think it's incumbent upon us to lean on our representatives to get something done with this, because it's a very real issue. But again, thanks to the FAC, thanks to city staff for pulling this together. I think it simplifies things for the folks here and for digestion for our residents.
Thank you.
Council? Agreed. I love, for me, to continue to drop our rate, I think shows real leadership. When we start going all the other taxing bodies, that idea of getting to 9.5, we need to put our best foot forward and show that we're doing the same thing. I trust City Manager Nicholas and our Finance Director Dittman on sharpening the pencils, figuring out a budget that's going to work with something like this. But I think it's just phenomenal. I think that's the responsibility that we have as council, to be always thinking about the taxpayer, always thinking about our fiduciary responsibilities up here. But again, showing leadership to the rest of the taxing bodies that we're at 11.1% aggregate tax rate right now. We got to get to 9.5. And we can only do that collectively. And if we can do that, that in turn will drive more economic development out there, commercial, potentially drive more housing starts, but it's how we can affect economic development on another way, another lever that we can pull. So I'm absolutely in support of option number 1 as well. Any other comments or questions? All them in favor?
Yeah, no, I'm in support of option number 1 as well. Just kudos to the finance team and for the staff working through this, putting together a budget. I know it's difficult, and we have, continually asked for multiple years to work on this problem to try and reduce the tax burden on the residents of DeKalb. And I just thank you very much for the hard work that you have put through to get there.
So I'm seeing a lot of head nodding. So we're asking you to go forward with option 1.
We will. We'll be back at the next meeting with that.
Oh, sorry, Alderman Smith.
Bill, is it possible to get this is probably the wrong thing to say. We want to get to 9.5. Who is and who isn't helping us to get there? How's that?
Well, you can look at the chart on page 4. Most everybody helped last year.
Okay.
This year will be an interesting one. Every year is interesting. There are levy decisions being made at the level of every taxing board and policy making group. And we were much encouraged by the result of last year. We are for the first time this year receiving some valuation from our Meta partners, and just to underline and to be grateful for the enormous investment they are continuing to make. We will see this year's contribution, which is only a partial of one half roughly of one data hall, two buildings and a middle piece. We'll see this every year for a period of many years. And I'm not going to get over my skis, but they're committed, obviously, to completing the second phase, which will ultimately have 5 buildings, and that's only one half of the land area that's under their control. So that makes a big difference. That floats the boat, even in these hard times, but as Alderman Perkins said, it's not going to be enough. And we've talked about this, and this is what's in my mind. What's the name of that movie with the plant that keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and starts eating? Thank you.
It's a good one.
Thank you.
Feed me, Seymour.
So, yep, that's it. That's it. So it's not going away. And urgency, as Alderman Perkins said, is the order of the day, because each year is that much closer. We're at the mountaintop right now, and the slope begins.
The plant has an appetite.
Thank you.
All right, City Manager, you're good to go. Option
you.
1.
Yep.
All right, moving on to agenda item K, resolutions. So number 1, Resolution 2022-103, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Kishwaukee Water Reclamation District regarding waste treatment buildings improvements and appurtenances? I don't know what an appurtenance is.
Appurtenances.
Appurtenances. What's an appurtenance? I'm sorry.
Like an easement.
An easement. Awesome. An easement located within the city of DeKalb.
I slip into French.
I missed that when I read through this. All right, can I have a motion to bring this to the floor?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Alderman Smith, seconded by Alderman Favor. City Manager.
Thank you, and I want to thank the trustees of KWRD for their patience and staff who are here tonight. I am delighted to bring this forward to you. I've been, and many of the people on our staff in this room have long been involved on a regular basis with staff and leadership of the Kishwaukee Water Reclamation District and its predecessor, the DeKalb Sanitary District. But since 2017, it's been, say, KWRD, which was incorporated to really raise the bar in how that collection system and the water that's processed and what is processed can be safely returned to the Kishwaukee River and to the environment. I've spent some time in the background. I'm not going to repeat all of this because of the length of the meeting to date, or to this point. Recounting what has happened in the just about 5 years since KWRD was incorporated. A $55 million upgrade to the reclamation facility at 1301 Sycamore Road. A lot of infrastructure was replaced, but more important than that, biological treatment, that is their mission, has been vastly improved. Hydraulic efficiency has been improved. And here's something that is just remarkable. The resource recovery, that's a polite way of saying what processed and so forth. And the creation of electrical power from our sewage has allowed them to target a net zero facility in terms of power draw on the grid by 2025, and frankly, there have been some months where you've actually hit that mark, but you know the goal here is within the next year or two to be able to do that constantly and consistently. The resolution that's before you would replace an intergovernmental agreement which instead of being based on cooperation was, in my mind, and as I inherited it, and as we've tried to work under it, both the city staff and also the KWRD staff, as a contentious agreement. Basically said our stuff is ours, your stuff is yours, we'll work together. And obviously at the staff level we have been working together, but the umbrella has not reflected that spirit of cooperation. So working with the city attorney, working also with Keith Foster, who is counsel for the KWRD, we've come up with this agreement before you. It basically says we're co-equal units of local government, which is something we've known for a long time, and we act like it exists in terms of the day-to-day work that our staffs do in holes all over our town. But that's just not what the shell has been. We recognize that KWRD is going to continue to upgrade its facilities. They've shown us that in the last 5 years. There's no holding back. And just recently had a masterly tour and event in the summer that invited the whole community in to see what's been accomplished with some really good guided tours. And the city and KWRD will continue to cooperate, not just in dealing with that commonality of the water we distribute and the reclamation of that water, but also there will be future development, there will be future growth in our facilities and their facilities, and we intend to work with our professionals, engineers, other staffers with unique experience to make sure that all of our community, businesses and individual households get the very best service. The details are laid out for you here in your background. And as our city attorney said, we'll always be providing for each other utility easements. We're a utility, they're a utility. We occupy the same space in roads and in parkways and overland in some cases into new development areas, and we're going to have to work collaboratively to make that count. So I think this is a 21st century agreement. It's not unlike agreements we've had with NIU where we're considered co-equal. I think this is long overdue, and I recommend your approval.
Council. All right, roll call, please.
McAdams.
Yes.
Verbic.
Yes.
Favor.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Larson.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes.
8 ayes.
Resolution 2022-103 passes. You know you were meant for this job. Bill, you know you were meant for this job when you're excited to bring an intergovernmental agreement before council, so. But, sure thing.
Thank you.
Yep. And this is, can you announce yourself and also your role? Because I'll
Yes,
consider you a
Dennis
subject matter.
Collins.
I want to consider you, just for the record, a subject matter expert on this particular
Yes.
agreement.
Okay. Dennis Collins, I'm the president of the Kishwaukee Water Reclamation District and have been on our board for several decades. I applaud you for this agreement. I'm not going to be short. The Bears are ahead 10-0, so that doesn't happen very often. We got to catch the end of the fourth quarter. But a couple of things I wanted to comment on. One, previous to this, on your tax thing. Bill and I, Bill comes to our meetings, and we have discussed the sanitary district and our board. There's a board member, Don Castantino, and our director, Mark Eddington, in the back. And we have discussed this, and we've already passed the resolution that we are going to be less than the city with our rate. So we want to be, now we're only 1%. We're a non-event, really, in the dollars end of things. But in light of spirit, we have already agreed to be less than whatever you guys decided.
That's awesome.
And so we hope for that collectiveness that we're able to go. And this isn't something Bill and I ever discussed, or Cole and I have also discussed this, but wouldn't it be something if we could get the government bodies to all collectively do this, and then we approach the school board? They're the 800-pound gorilla. We all know it. They don't like to give money back. I'm not making a judgment. I'm just telling you what the facts are. And what's happening south of the tollway is going to be the most important thing that's happened in my adult lifetime. I grew up in DeKalb. And so if we can capitalize before that money comes in on making some decisions to lower our tax rates, we will see growth here like we did in the 70s, because people will decide to come to our community because they can get more house, more property, and the taxes are less. And don't think when you hear, you guys all know this, but 11 and 9.5, people look at that. And it's an important issue. So wouldn't it be something if all council, all sanitary, and everybody else went to a school board meeting and said, this is what we're doing.
Gonna hold
Can
you
you
to that
guys
one.
join us? So anyways, that's just the idea that popped into my head. But lastly, I wanted to say, I've been in this for some time. I'm not an elected official. I don't fight the battles that you guys do. I'm appointed by the county board. But I want to tell you, for those that are here now, we have the most impressive leaders that I have seen in DeKalb in my 25 years on the sanitary and really my whole life here. Cohen is unbelievable as mayor. He's fantastic. I don't get into the nitty-gritty with Cohen, but I've known him for a number of years, and his spirit is unbelievable. But I'll tell you, this guy sitting right over here, Bill Nicholas, is the heart and soul of what goes on in this community. And don't you think for a minute what happened south of the tollway would have happened the same way to the degree it hasn't without Bill Nicholas. So I just want to give praise to that. I will say he was a sanitary board member for a short time, less than one term when Sycamore
I like the word
grabbed him.
short. Short's good.
You have to live in DeKalb, and Sycamore grabbed him, and so he moved on. But so that is, I want to cover that base. But Bill is spectacular. He meets with us at all our meetings, and I just want to tell you the camaraderie and the spirit that we feel at the district, along with the city of DeKalb now, and I think this kind of memorializes it. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Bear down. All right, so that was fantastic. By the way, you guys don't have to stay. You're more than welcome to exit, or, I mean, at this point, you're in it to win it almost, but no, please, you can go ahead and leave. No worries whatsoever. Enjoy the game. All right, moving on to Resolution 2022-104, authorizing a purchase agreement with Compass Minerals for the purchase of water conditioning bulk softener salt for a period of 1 year from January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023 for the purpose of treating the city's drinking water. Can I have a motion to bring this to the floor again?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Alderwoman Morris, seconded by Alderman Verbeek. City Manager.
We're buying minerals now for the next 3 things.
Yep.
Okay, this is softener salt. It's the end of one-year contract, and we've talked in the last months about how these particular minerals that go into our water or additives are getting more and more expensive and more dear to find. So we went out for bid, thanks to Brian Favor and his staff. The low price came from Compass Minerals, but even with a low price from a public bid, we're 10.3% higher than we were this time last year. We recommend a 1-year contract. We don't know where we're going to be in a year, and rather not go out long on this. And your approval of this particular contract is appreciated.
Council? Hearing no questions, roll call, please.
Verbeek.
Yes.
Favor.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Larson.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
McAdams.
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes.
8 ayes.
Resolution 2022-104 passes. All right, number 3, Resolution 2022-105, authorizing a purchase agreement with Alexander Company for the purchase of chlorine for a period of 1 year from January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023 for the purpose of treating the city's drinking water. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So
Moved by Alderman Morris, seconded by Alderman Favor. City Manager.
Talking about chlorine here, as the mayor read, we went out and got we only received 1 bid, and that's from the current supplier, and we're happy to get a bid at this point, and price is going up on this as well. We're going out 1 year, same reasons. Recommend your approval.
Council. Roll call, please.
Favor.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Larson.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
McAdams.
Yes.
Verbeek.
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes.
8 ayes.
Resolution 2022-105 passes. Number 4, Resolution 2022-106, authorizing a purchase agreement with Water Solutions Unlimited for the purchase of fluoride for a period of 1 year from January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023, for the purpose of treating the city's drinking water. Can I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Smith, seconded by Alderman Perkins. City Manager.
Salt, chlorine, and now fluoride, basically the same thing, except in this case, we've been doing multi-year extensions, and it probably has figured favorably, I mean, or I guess I should say not as negatively in our actual pricing. So with the recommendation of the Water Department, when we went out, we got a low bid from Water Solutions Unlimited. And it will be an increase of about $574 annually compared to our current price of fluoride, but we feel this is a pretty good deal, and from here on, there can be a one-time per year adjustment that will be tied to the Chicago area CPI, and so there's some cap on our exposure as we go forward for the next, could be a couple years or it could be not. We can decide, mutual agreement of the parties to extend. So we feel that that was part of the package, it's working, we'll stay with it.
Council. Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams.
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes.
8 ayes.
Resolution 2022-106 passes. Moving on to agenda item L, ordinances, second reading. Ordinance 2022-028, revoking ordinance 2012-070, providing a special use permit for a vehicle salvage yard located at 1008 Oak Street, DeKalb Iron and Metal, Dimco. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Favor, seconded by Alderman McAdams. City Manager.
Thank you. The owner's not here tonight, I don't believe. But at the last regular meeting, he was here. There was some back and forth. We wanted to see where we'd be in 2 weeks. Here, you have some pictures that were put at your places tonight, thanks to our fire prevention officer for doing those pictures this morning. But the sum of it is this. Nearly all the vehicles that were present when we first considered this back in June have been crushed. However, few, if any, of the compacted remains have been trucked from the site for recycling. These cubes, or I don't know what you call them, are stacked like cordwood on the site right now. It does look cleaner, a little more orderly. There still are the very large piles of salvaged rebar, which, we'll go through this. Those are the compacted cubes. And I think we have a rebar.
It was up earlier.
Yeah. Or did we already look at that?
Yeah, we saw it.
Okay. That's not allowed on this site. The original special use said a limited number of vehicles can be crushed. And,
there it is.
And there are 2 long hedgerows of that, and nothing's been done there. So we recommend the revocation of this. This seems like it is an extraordinary thing, but what it will do is bring us to the table, and we can talk with the owner very matter-of-factly about what we're willing to see here going forward, and it'll be a back and forth. But while that's going on, what we're proposing is that there's nothing else imported into this site. It's illegal. It's been illegal for a long time, and you've shown a lot of patience in trying to deal with the owner, and it's gotten better, but it's a long way from being right. And we like that opportunity to eyeball to eyeball, try to figure out something better. And if we can't, he's still got an obligation, and ultimately we could find, if there's no movement at all, we could find this particular operation accordingly based on what the municipal code offers. But I think right now we'd rather see a resolution for the neighboring properties to get these piles gone.
And we gave the 90-day extension, gave the 60-day extension, and here we are. So, any other questions or comments? Alderman Favor.
Are the buses new? I don't recall seeing those from
They've been there,
Have
just
they?
not in the
Unburied.
pictures we've shown. Yeah. Thank you.
Those are my buses. They've probably been there 3 years. So, That'll give you.
For your
Well,
buses?
I guess my concern was, is he taking in additional business or additional cars to crush?
It's a little hard to,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I absolutely hate to revoke his license, but we have asked and we've been very patient.
By the way, what's wrong with those buses?
I was gonna say flat tire, but that's.
Any other questions or comments? All right, roll call, please.
Larson? Yes. Smith?
Yes.
Perkins?
Yes.
McAdams?
Yes.
Verbic?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Mayor Barnes?
Yes.
8 ayes.
Ordinance 2022-028 passes on second reading. All right, so now we'll move on to the part of the agenda. Some of you are excited we're here. We do have some public speakers. So first one, I have Dwayne Brown. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. So I would take a motion to bring ordinance 2022-051, amending Chapter 10 Landlord-Tenant Regulations as it pertains to the crime-free housing provisions to the floor.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Alderwoman Morris, seconded by Alderman Favor. Now you go, sir. Sorry about that. And again, as a reminder, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Dwayne Brown, 4th Ward. At the October 10th City Council meeting, I said the crime-free housing ordinance didn't accomplish anything. I want to clarify that statement. It has accomplished many things, just not its intended purpose. It has shifted the responsibility of the police department to the landlords, increased administrative costs for both landlords and the city, increased rents for the tenants, created a hostile atmosphere, defiantly ignored groups such as the Illinois Coalition Against Domestic Violence, Housing Action Illinois, New York University Law Civil Rights Clinic, the Sargent Shriver Center on Poverty Law, and the Chicago Area Fair Housing Alliance. It also raises concerns that tenants will be afraid to call 911 to report a crime, even though the city has made it public that they will not be prosecuted. They may not be aware that they won't be evicted, and they may not call to report a crime. It also raises, the city said its proposed plan will be an important tool in combating weapons offenses and other crimes by holding landlords accountable for allowing crimes to continue at their properties. There is no evidence that these types of ordinances reduce crime. They may just perpetuate domestic violence, especially for women in an unsafe and hostile environment with a partner. The proposal to allow landlords to ban tenants' guests who break the law is unenforceable and is a violation of the landlord's rights and should be the responsibility of the police. Eviction should not be used as a method to prohibit crime. That is discrimination, and we don't need that. The city, with its proposed crime-free initiative plan, believes it will eliminate or at least reduce crime in the future. However, this plan, which is unconstitutional, discriminatory, increases the liability risk for the city, is unenforceable, and creates discontent between landlords and tenants, advocacy groups, police, and the public, should be rejected. The statement has been made that we can't police our way out of this increase in crime. I think we can do exactly that. This proposal before the City Council is a witch's brew of municipal fines, penalties, ordinance language, punitive measures, police response, landlords' actions, tenants' reactions, racism, public opinion, and any legal action taken by the courts. I plead with the council, please extinguish the fire and don't stir the pot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. David Jacobson. And as I said, 3 minutes, sir.
It's not every day I agree with Mr. Brown on an issue. I think it's clear that based on what we're seeing in our community, that something has to be done to change the current direction of crime in our city. I don't think anyone in the room disagrees with that reality. It is important, however, to note that no one is looking to derail or stop the process of holding our negligent landlords accountable. In reality, over the past few weeks, what I've seen through several meetings is that the landlords have spent dozens of hours doing just the opposite. It is clear that if this thing is going to work, it needs to be fair, reasonable, honest, and inclusive. And I can't fathom that a single one of you electeds would disagree that those would be the hallmarks of a quote-unquote good law. The draft before you tonight is not that. The draft that the city has the opportunity to genuinely work in partnership with the good landlords of our community. Unfortunately, at this point, we just aren't there. The landlords have submitted a draft that would provide all of the hallmarks I've mentioned. It would indeed give the city the tools it needs to take on our negligent landlords head on, while making the law clearer, fairer, and more equitable for all parties involved, the city, the landlords, and the tenants included. It ensures that there are steps for direct accountability, including nearly all of the city's desired penalties in their first draft, but also ensures for fairness by defining the process and penalties more in depth, providing educational opportunities, and giving opportunities for proactive landlords to work with the city in partnership to deal with the issues we face. Most important, however, is the addition of language that ensures that frivolous lawsuits, which are wholly avoidable, threaten to derail our progress, that they don't cause an unnecessary expense for the landlords and the city alike. Again, none of the landlords are looking to derail or disrupt this process. What I'm asking for tonight is to slow this thing down for one meeting. Direct your city manager and city attorney to go back and make an honest and earnest attempt at getting this law to the point where it can be a good law and truly be the tool the city needs to make some headway. The landlords are asking for simple changes. Without getting into the weeds, they include such items as the ability for landlord, management, and tenants to proactively engage and report issues without risking huge fines and building closures, merely for reporting that crime. To ensure that the law honors state and federal rights of tenants,
You're at 3
which
minutes, sir.
the law does not currently as it's written. The assurance that minor crimes do not unfairly target our tenants and force them into homelessness unnecessarily, merely for the sake of meeting definitions that were poorly written.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. That's 3 minutes. Appreciate it. All right. Moving on to the next person, Neely Erickson, please.
Honorable Mayor Barnes and City Council members, my name is Neely Erickson, and I am the Government Affairs Director for Illinois Realtors here today on behalf of local area realtors. Thank you for this opportunity to address you. We recognize that terms such as arrest record and criminal history were removed from the ordinance. However, the ordinance still requires housing providers to act against a tenant based solely on an allegation. However defined, without a conviction, a housing provider will still be put at risk. We recognize the city does not agree with us on all aspects, but law-abiding housing providers will unfairly bear the financial and professional risk of potential human rights violations by complying with the city's mandates under this ordinance. A housing provider honoring the crime-free lease addendum by initiating an eviction or termination of a lease based on anything but a conviction opens the housing provider to potential liability. While it is true that a housing provider can require that a tenant not engage in criminal activity. A housing provider will need to show that the tenant actually engaged in that criminal activity. Requiring a conviction adds the necessary layer of protection for a housing provider to defend themselves against a complaint. Anything short of that burden of proof will leave the housing provider open to potential liability. While we agree with the comments in the agenda stating, as the Illinois Human Rights Act states, a prior arrest record cannot be used in landlord screenings of potential tenants, we disagree with the implications that the protections are limited to just that. The protections of the Illinois Human Rights Act do not stop when a lease is signed. An arrest record is a protected class throughout the entire real estate transaction. The arrest record protection is through the entire tenancy and enjoyment of the property in terms of the lease. The entire intent of the inclusion of the arrest record protection was to ensure that a tenant is not discriminated against based solely on an allegation without a conviction. This ordinance fails to recognize that protection and puts law-abiding housing providers in a situation of facing punishment for complying with the ordinance. The city argues that this requirement are not new, since the crime-free housing lease addendum has been required by local codes since 2013. What the city fails to say or recognize is the fact that the arrest record protection was recently added to the Illinois Human Rights Act in 2020. It is a new and largely untested protection of the Illinois Human Rights Act, and the ordinance must be updated to protect the law-abiding housing providers in this community, the same housing providers that the city claims to be on the side of. In its current form, this ordinance does not do that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Will Heinisch.
Good evening, City Council. Will Heinisch. I just want to start out by saying I've taken a number of calls from landlords, property owners, people at large, everybody but tenants. I didn't have any tenants call me about this ordinance. I did reach out to Representative Kiker's office to get the understanding of Senate Bill 1780. I pressed the city manager and city attorney on their interpretation of 1780. I pressed Neely Erickson on their interpretation of 1780, and I reached out to other state leaders in the landlord group. Everybody has a different terminology and understanding of this law that's passed. So I tried to take a reasonable man approach. I'm not an attorney, but when you look at different laws, even within the state of Illinois, I went to the eviction law. And the eviction law actually says, for the commission of any act that would constitute a felony or a Class A misdemeanor under the law of the state. So I believe there's even conflict now within the state law. Where I'm going with this is crime-free housing 2.0. We did crime-free housing 1.0, which was a simple notification back and forth between the landlord. I think this crime-free housing ordinance and what this contemplates as 2.0, this is going to be a higher level of a person, and it's going to take more procedures and policies probably than what can be written in an ordinance. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is this ordinance contemplates the crime-free housing coordinator actually talking to the landlord, talking to the tenant, and being a hands-on approach rather than the strike one, strike two, strike three, back and forth. So I think where a lot of misconceptions is how this ordinance is going to be played out and carried out, and how this new crime-free housing coordinator is going to be held to a lot higher standard. All eyes are going to be looking at this person, and in the ordinance and language that I suggested to the city to remove the arrest, remove some of that, and based on the criminal statutes of preponderance of evidence, that it's going to be a win-win for all. I believe that the police department can police our way out of this with the help of citizens, landlords, tenants, and all people on deck and on base. So with that, the majority of the DARA landlords are neutral to supportive of this. I don't think everybody's ever going to be able to come to the table and we all agree on the same thing. There's just too much disparity within the state law. but I would like to see this move forward. And I think I have not talked to any of the council people directly, other than the mayor, and that I think that in 60 days, if I come before you or come before the city manager and say, this isn't working, or this is not what we signed up for, or this is not right, I think you'll take action, or he'll take action with this person. So I feel confident that the landlords that I represent and part of DARA have a good relationship with the city, that if something goes awry or not correct, that we'll take corrective action to correct it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heinisch. All right, City Manager.
Thank you. I want to pick up where Mr. Heinisch left off. In recent weeks, Mr. Heinisch, Jim Mason, who's in the audience tonight, Glenn Roby, Mike Pitsley, a number of other landlords have spent a lot of time, not just with city officials like myself, but amongst themselves, talking about what could be done. The Carlsons are in the back. They've been involved in this conversation as well. People who are responsible, people who the previous 1.0 never had to be brought to bear on, and that isn't obviously what we're aiming at. We're aiming at people who are not intentional in the way they, in terms of their responsibilities as providers of housing for rent. And sadly, we are at this point, but here we are, and we're trying to make it fair. And I'd be the first to admit that we've come a long way since September 16th, when the first very rough draft was revealed in conversations with some of the same people I mentioned here earlier. I appreciate the candor. Obviously, relationships are at the heart, and I think that's what Mr. Heinisch was referring to toward the end of his comments. The new director is going to have to build relationships, and they have to be strong working relationships, and not just based on phone conversations and emails, but getting out, getting eyeball to eyeball with units, buildings, people who are involved in our housing scene, either as responsible parties or people who maybe aren't responsible. And we expect that, we demand it. It's demanded of us, and I am obligated to demand it of this director and everybody else who's working for the city government who might have some involvement here. I want to thank the landlords who have stepped up and in a spirit of cooperation have helped us make this a better law. I'm content, based on what I've said here tonight and what's in the background for you, that we are at that point where we ought to give it a try. Maybe we'll look back and think of some things later on that we could do a little bit better, tweak it a little bit more. But I think this is in shape and ready to go, and I recommend your approval on second reading.
Council, questions, comments? Yes, Alderwoman Morris.
I guess I'd like to hear the end of what David Jacobson was going to say, if that's allowable.
Yeah, if we, well, does council want that?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Jacobson, if you can keep it brief. Perfect.
Not too far off. Again, I was finishing up with forcing home tenants into homelessness unnecessarily. They include more inclusive educational opportunities to help educate landlords and use education as part of the solution. There are also several city givebacks in the proposed changes that have been provided to the city to help them better address the issues at hand. These are simple, reasonable, and rational changes meant to make the law stronger, not weaker. If the goal is truly to do as the policy declaration and the ordinance states and work in partnership with the landlords, I'm asking that you give it 2 weeks to get to that point and give it that opportunity. It took 2 full years the last go-round to get this language right. I'm asking to hold it off for 2 weeks to allow for the important conversations it will take to get it right now, so that this time around it can be the effective tool in the city's arsenal that it needs against crime in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, Other questions, comments? Alderwoman Larson.
This is just kind of a little side note. I had received, I think, 4 calls from landlords, and a lot of their issues weren't necessarily with the document here, and I don't think there's any way we can address it, but it was, a lot of the frustration is at the whole eviction process. And you know, talking with them and realizing that if there was some way that we could offer any kind of support that the courts would recognize, that would give them more proof or documentation, because I guess you guys can live at the courts twice a week to go through evictions. So I don't know that we can add anything like that now, but it would be something that I would like to see with the officer, if there's anything that we could supply to landlords for more support.
So I think that support's already been offered and has had some impact. The county sheriff's department is responsible for evictions on the state statute, and city attorney can help me if you want to know more detail about that. The court system, we have some new judges in the court system. They're getting used to the, partly because of Amy Rubenstein's involvement in trying to bring some safety and peace to her units. There are more evictions that have been done. Everyone's learned something through that process. The process has gone from, just here in recent weeks, from about 7 weeks, about 3 to 4 weeks for the notice part, and then to get to the court and to get the order of eviction, which then may be other time. Where an eviction is, this is only one piece of this, obviously, but since you mentioned that, as another 3, maybe 4 weeks, so 7, 8 weeks. It's some of the most recent ones in the last 10 days have been cut in half. Now, it has a lot to do with the court schedule too. What we can do, and the Chief Byrd and I have talked about this. You know, there's 1 or 2 people that are specially trained to respond in behalf of their county sheriff's deputies who do the eviction details, and they are otherwise during other times on patrol or whatever they're doing. So we've had some conversation. Can it help if we were to do a little trading and so forth? But at this point, it's not beyond the ability of the sheriff's department to take care of this. It's just a matter of getting that process, doing it fairly, providing opportunities along the way, as the judges have done here locally, to see, is this about rental assistance or is it about unlawful activity, and what is the reason? Is it somebody just hasn't paid? And the judges in particular are very sensitive to that, and will ask the landlord and tenant to work something out. But we're talking about unlawful activity here. We're talking about egregious unlawful activity. And so that's how we got started on this back 6 to 8 weeks ago. I've looked at the recommended changes that Mr. Jacobson is referring to in general terms. Some of them are in this draft. Some of them are setting up a system where instead of looking for consequences, we're looking for forgiveness. And that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable because it won't work. If you've got somebody who's inclined not to be appropriate in their relationship with their tenants, or to take responsibility for things that may occur that are within their sight and sound, then we're heading in the wrong direction. So I recommend, again, your approval of this on second reading.
Council, any other questions or comments? Alderman Burbick.
One of the concerns we heard was the challenges of version 1.0 perhaps not accomplishing what we were looking for. What I would like to see, if it pleases council, is some type of a quarterly report. So once the director is landed by the end of the calendar year, perhaps, then we come back March or April, it would be great to hear a report on how things are going. And maybe that's a report in partnership with DARA. Maybe it's at a DARA meeting and not at city council, I'm not sure. But just so we can all keep up with how it's going.
Or both.
Right.
It's part of the ordinance. It's actually required that the crime-free housing director give a quarterly report.
Which, while I think about it, it's also part of our intergovernmental agreement with the school district to provide a report, if I recall, on a regular basis. If monthly, maybe it's quarterly. about how things have been going out at the district. So that might be a good one that we
We'll
need
have
to-
monthly reports, a quarterly report is, I mean,
Yeah, just some report
it'll
would be
be on,
nice.
it'll be on your consent agenda, and anytime we can take it off and talk about it.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments or questions, council? Alderman Smith.
Yeah, since I was gone, I did read most of this, but, Will, I appreciate you coming on this. I think the key here, tell me if I'm wrong, was someone's been on both sides of this now, is just communication. I think, if, the landlords want to reach out to us, and I think, at least for my years, that it was always great to have them on your side and my whole career in law enforcement. Mike's not here. I know he helped me out a few times on things, and I think that's what we're after, is just a sheer, don't slam the door in my face. I never had that with, the landlords that are currently in town. One question came to mind, and I apologize if I don't know the answer. How does a housing authority fit into this? Don't they really have under Section 8, a more as strong of eviction process for criminal activity as this is written in our ordinance? Or am I wrong?
Well, I can't speak to their, I don't know their, but.
Matt,
Well,
I
well,
said.
a couple things is the public housing is exempted from
Okay.
this regulation, but separately speaking is that they do have in their own regulations with HUD and their own leases. It depends on each. I can't speak to the actual DeKalb housing lease, just having not seen it, but there's usually a prohibition of unlawful criminal activity, and that allows for an eviction process. And that's been upheld by the United States Supreme Court.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yep.
It just popped in my mind sitting here, so that's all I have. Thank you.
Any others? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams.
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
8 aye.
Ordinance 2022-051 passes on second reading. All right. Yeah, that's monumental. I'm glad we can put this behind us. We can get our new Director of Crime-Free Housing in. Will, thank you.
Thanks, Will.
Thanks to everyone that came out and spoke tonight. Thank you to Carlson's for all of your feedback. Mr. Mason, appreciate it. All right, moving on to ordinances first reading, agenda item M, number 1, ordinance 2022-055, amending chapter 52, offenses against public peace, safety, and morals as it pertains to crime-free housing provisions. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Verbic, seconded by Alderman Favor. City Manager?
Thank you. Why isn't there more here? Because basically all we're doing is some cleanup, so we don't have duplication. We took the crime-free housing provisions, and we've amended them now. We've improved upon them, I think, and so we've deleted the old system, got the new system now, which is in Chapter 10.
Council? Any questions, comments? Hearing none. Roll call.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams.
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes.
8 aye.
Ordinance 2022-055 passes on first reading. I take a motion to waive second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderwoman Larson, seconded by Alderman Verbic. Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
McAdams.
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes.
8 aye.
Second reading has been waived for ordinance 2022-055. I'm just chuckling looking ahead at the next item.
Me too.
It's nice to have something a little light. Ordinance 2022, amending Chapter 18, Dogs and Other Animals, Section 18.04, impoundment to increase the fees for impoundment. Can I have a motion to bring this to the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Perkins, seconded by Alderwoman Morris. City Manager.
As a result of all your work tonight, I think dogs and cats are going to lay down together. Be forever.
Pandemonium.
And it
But
can be cheap, though.
if it doesn't happen, and for some reason, people have stray dogs and the police pick them up, we'd like to be paid for a better portion of the actual expense of that. It's been 32 years since we've updated our fees for impoundment, and we've just asked to bring them up to that level which the DeKalb County Animal Control Bureau charges. It's $50 for a pickup fee, and believe me, sometimes there's people running around, and it's not just thank you, and the dog gives you its leash and immediately goes into the car. So, and then $10 per day service charge. There's food, there's cleaning, there's, so pretty modest still. We recommend your approval on first and second reading.
Comments or questions? Alderman McAdams.
I have a dog that runs. It's not her fault. She doesn't know. And for the owners who have it, pets that don't have substantial means, I don't know that we're going to really accomplish anything. I'm going to vote no.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
No.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
7-0.
Ordinance 2022-056 passes on first reading. I'd have a motion to waive second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Verbic, Alderman Favor, seconded by Alderwoman Morris. Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
No.
Verbic,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
7-0.
Second reading was waived for ordinance 2022-056. Moving on to agenda item 3, ordinance 2022-057, amending chapter 36 amusement, section 36.01, amusement devices to prohibit the operation of electronic product promotion kiosks. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Smith, seconded by Alderman Perkins. City Manager.
At the last regular meeting, the council was unanimous in its opinion that these electronic product promotion kiosks had no place in our community. This particular ordinance would remove any opportunity for them to get established in our businesses, and we recommend your approval.
Council, questions, comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
8-0.
Ordinance 2022-057 passes on first reading. Would you like us to waive second reading? Okay. I take a motion to waive second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Perkins, seconded by Alderwoman Larson. Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Larson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
8-0.
Second reading was waived for ordinance 2022-057. Moving on to number 4, ordinance 2022-058, amending Chapter 38 intoxicating liquors, Section 38.27 gambling devices to prohibit the presence or operation of electronic product promotion kiosks. Can I have a motion to bring this to the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderwoman Morris, seconded by Alderman Favor. City Manager?
Chapter 38, as the mayor just read, our intoxicating liquors chapter needed to be amended as well to prohibit the introduction of these kiosks in licensed liquor establishments. We recommend your approval.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
8-0.
Ordinance 2022-058 passes on first reading. I take a motion to waive second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Favor, seconded by Alderman McAdams. Whew, getting late. Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes,
Yes.
8-0.
Second reading was waived for ordinance 2022-058. Now moving on to number 5, ordinance 2022-059, approving a special use permit for an amusement establishment, cyber and esports cafe at 901 Lucinda Avenue, Four Wills LLC, represented by William Williams. Can I get a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Alderman Smith, seconded by Alderman Verbeek. We're finally here, sir. All right, city manager.
Yes, and thank you for your patience, Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Stand up, please, so we can all see.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
bearing with us this whole night, yeah.
So, he is interested in establishing a cyber and esports cafe at one of the units at the old Village Commons bookstore on Lucinda Avenue. A special use permit is required by our UDO, hence he is before you tonight. He has been before the Planning and Zoning Commission. He's going to bring some life and some fun. There's going to be sporting competitions for the video games that his various tools, the computers and game consoles will provide. He is open in staggered hours to accommodate what's likely to be a pretty active customer base. And there will be no alcoholic beverages. There will be snacks and non-alcoholic beverages that will be offered. We think it's a great use and a good location, and the Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously agreed. We bring it to you for your support.
Council. Yes, Alderman McAdams.
Thank you for a unique and fun idea. We can't wait to see it in motion.
Any other comments? Alderman in favor.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it was old as new, right? There used to be an arcade.
Yeah, the
there
Froom
as well.
Froom was there.
But no, I read about, just the esports and the gaming competitions probably 2 or 3 years ago. I think I sent the city manager something like, we need something like this in DeKalb. So thank you so much for your investment and for bringing it here to DeKalb. I wish you all success. Thank you.
Any others? Hearing none, roll call, please.
McAdams.
Yes.
Verbic.
Yes.
Favor.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Larson.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes.
8 aye.
Ordinance 2022-059 passes on first reading. I'd take a motion to waive second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman McAdams, seconded by Alderman Perkins. Questions, comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Verbic.
Yes.
Favor.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Larson.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
McAdams.
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes.
8 aye.
Second reading has been waived for ordinance 2022-059. Welcome, sir. Yeah. Have a great night. All right, last but not least, number 6, ordinance 2022-060, approving a preliminary and final plat of the DeKalb County Nursing Home subdivision and approval of an amendment to ordinance 2019-003 to amend the interior lot line setbacks between the DeKalb County Nursing Home and the DeKalb County Health Department located at 2550 and 2600 North Annie Glidden Road, DeKalb County. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Alderman Verbeek, seconded by Alderman Favor. City Manager.
We are honored to have our county administrator, Brian Gregory, in the audience, who likewise
Brian.
has shown extraordinary patience. Thank you. I'm sorry it was the last. We just had to. We'll
He
pay-
asked if we should put
we'll
it to the
pay
end.
for
I'm like,
this.
absolutely.
Yeah. So what are we doing here? As it says in the background, as we all know, the county board has entered into an agreement to sell the county nursing home. The nursing home is nestled in a campus of buildings, including the county health department. And so you won't see these lines, but some lot lines have to be established so that this sale can occur. And the sale, the county board has determined is in the best interest of the residents of our county. So they've come before us, since this is within the DeKalb city limits. There needed to be an amendment to an ordinance that was passed back in 2019, establishing as a part of an expansion of the nursing home complex there, amending the lot lines. There are also some other things that the county is willing to do. We've got to repair some easements, and the plats that have been brought forth will dedicate a multi-use path and a public easement with language that will indicate the purpose and the source. And finally, the Kishwaukee Water Reclamation District is, I think, already in the process of just looking at some of the sewers out there. Some are private sewers, some are public sewers, and just to make sure that they're all operating properly. The Planning and Zoning Commission, with these methods of bringing things to a head, and also in a complementary way, has had a hearing on the proposed request, and unanimously recommend that you approve the preliminary plat, which includes exhibits that indicate the new lot lines. And we recommend that you support the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation.
Council, questions, comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Favor?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Perkins?
Yes.
McAdams?
Yes.
Verbic?
Yes.
Mayor Barnes?
Yes.
8 aye.
Ordinance 2022-060 passes on first reading. Can I have a motion to waive second reading?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderwoman Morris, seconded by Alderman McAdams. Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Morris?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Perkins?
Yes.
McAdams?
Yes.
Verbic?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Mayor Barnes?
Yes.
8 aye.
Second reading has been waived for ordinance 2022-060. Thanks for coming out, County Administrator.
Brian.
And you're more than welcome to skedaddle. All right, moving on to reports and communications. Council member reports. Who'd like to start? Alderman Smith.
No
Oh,
report.
sorry.
Let me just start with the no report.
Okay. Alderman Smith.
14th Street is done. Zach's not here tonight. Thank
Yeah.
you for that. Brian's here. I'll give him a little congratulations. Walmart, if anybody's gone to Walmart, they've got, you don't fall in the holes anymore. So it is,
Nice.
I know that's a long time coming, but that's
Yeah.
really appreciated. So that's all I have.
That SSA was a great addition, for sure. Alderman McAdams.
No report.
Alderman Favor.
I don't really have anything to report. I just want to say that, I'm, proud to be on the council, and especially this evening, working together with the different governing bodies, really seeing the vision for working together as a community to lower the tax rate and, doing the work, making the hard decisions. They're not easy to make. There's a lot of emotion behind a lot of those, but obviously everybody up here demonstrates that we're doing it for the benefit of our community. So just want to thank you for your service.
Thank you. Alderman Verbic.
No report.
Alderman Perkins.
Got a couple things. Thanks, Emily, for the update. Great update on the library stuff. Great to hear the detail of what's going on. Thanks again to the Finance Advisory Group. I mean, that was good detail to have in advance of this discussion. Lastly, the Fairview project is off and going. The signage that's up there is great. It's real road closed signage. I can't tell you how many people are pulling in thinking, well, it's not really closed. There's a shortcut out the back way. Or if I move the barricades. No, don't move the barricades. But it's great progress, great to see. Thanks to the city staff for moving along on that.
Awesome. Alderwoman Larson.
No report.
I'll be brief. So City Manager Nicholas and I met with Clear Investment Group just for an updated report on all their properties. There is a lot of progress being made there, including exterior lighting. I would recommend, if you wanted to on your way home tonight, to go by Ridgebrook and see what that place looks like. It's lit up like Wrigley Field. It's great, and they're going to be doing that for all of their properties. But again, Bill and I meet with them regularly, every 2 weeks at this point, for an update status on their properties and what's going on, and they've been great to work with. I also went with Alderwoman Larson to the 1619 play. That was really cool. The panel afterward I thought was awesome. I'm so glad we stayed for that. But that was just a great event to be able to go to and get more informed. Also met with the DeKalb County mayors. That's every quarter we all get together and share best practices, what's going on, and more just relationship building so we know who to lean on for different issues. So that was great. Also went out to the MLTL project, which is Northern Illinois University. Amanda Baum over there works with teachers that are going to be getting their degree and their certificate and enter into 7th grade-ish teaching. And they had, I don't even know, 100, 200 7th graders out to have the students at Northern Illinois University work directly with them. And it was just cool to be able to see that and see that kind of cooperation between the district and NIU together. Also went to Athena. It was a wonderful night, as always. If you haven't gone to that, it's a really well-run event. It's amazing when you hear the stories of all these incredible women and what they have done on so many levels. We're fortunate to have so many passionate, focused women in our community that really move the needle forward. Also, I was able to read the Eagle Charge. I'm an Eagle Scout. The Eagle Charge for Peyton Chesser. He was the last scout that I have a connection with when I was an adult leader in Troop 33. So that was a really cool moment to do with Troop 33 the other night. And then also 2 weeks ago, right after the council meeting last time, I met with the mayor of Aurora, the city manager of Aurora, and their chief of police to discuss what they did from a crime-free housing perspective, from a rental licensing perspective. And they went after it a number of years ago, even criminally charged landlords. So they were an example of, hopefully we never need to get to that point. Hopefully everything that we do, and I have a high confidence that the crime-free housing version 2.0 that we implemented, including the new director of crime-free housing, is going to make a substantial impact and address the issues that we have. But it was great to meet with the Mayor Irving, the mayor of Aurora, to get some more ideas and form a relationship there as well. And that's it. All right, with that, city manager, you got a report?
No report.
No report, all right. So I would ask council for a motion to move to executive session in order to discuss the sale or lease of real property as provided for in 5 ILCS 120/2C6. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Alderwoman Morris, seconded by Alderman Smith. Roll call?
Larson?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Perkins?
Yes.
McAdams?
Yes.
Verbic?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Mayor Barnes?
Yes.
8 ayes.
Our regular meeting is now in recess. All right, you all.